rally.
Probably, right?
You know,
Okay.
shoot fast.
What's up, everybody? I'm punishing myself tonight. I'm off work. So I figured, why not get some cheap and easy content? Why not watch the Republican debate? We all know what they're going to say. Trump is not there because, like, Trump is basically the shoe-in. Like, he's going to be their nominee for 24. So this is basically just a gaggle of nobodies, just saying nobody things, saying very fascist things, but we all know it's going to be Trump. But sometimes these things produce funny shit. And we all love funny shit, right? I mean, yeah, the world is a mess. Wars abound. Problems, contradictions, issues. But one thing we can always rely on is laughs from the people who aspire to govern us, but we'll never get to.
We've got lots more to come here tonight. You're going to see all of it after the debate. But let me bring back in our panel now with Tom and I, Carlos Curbelo, Hogan Gidley, Noel McClure. Hogan, let me start with you here, because to the point that Dash...
You know, I hate this whole, like, talking head news. Yeah, I guess technically you could extrapolate the position that I am a talking head, but, like, these people just make their money by just saying nothing. Nothing. Like, these people are not contributing anything to the discourse. They're just paid talkers.
Is making the idea that there is some malleability in the Republican primary electorate here.
Sure.
To a degree, some people say they could be persuaded for their first choice candidate. But you know who doesn't say that? People who back Donald Trump. They are intensely loyal. They are intensely vocal. They have said time and time again to pollsters that they don't want to be swayed. They are not interested in being swayed. They are here for Donald Trump.
Well, first, let me say, having worked for a lot of presidential candidates and done a lot of presidential debates, they're the most fun nights in the world when you're not
Good evening, comrades.
working on a campaign. When you're on a campaign, they're horrible. Look, obviously some opportunities up there for people to do certain things that bring voters to their side. But debates are really about creating moments and taking that moment, creating momentum, and then ultimately building a movement. It is very difficult to do that when
None of these people are going to build a fucking movement. Trump is the movement.
Donald Trump has such a stranglehold on so many in the GOP primary field right now, the people that
Because he's going to be the nominee. None of these people are relevant.
want to get out there and vote for him. I'm going to find it interesting tonight to see not just who can have that moment, but if they can do something with it. And
From the beginning of this debate, a lot of pressure on each of their shoulders.
Oh, my God. Oh, my God. I wouldn't trust any of these people around children.
For a variety of different reasons. So far, listen, some of this is about the optics, the smiles, the waves, they're shoulder to shoulder. They're walking over to the corner of the stage together as they go back to take their podiums.
And Noel, I think we've spoken about this before. In the first debate, everyone dressed like Donald Trump. Do you remember that? Everyone had the navy blue suit, the red tie. Here we have a little bit of variety here. Noel, you know, you work a lot with donors. You need money.
It's going to be another battle of men, pretty much. Also, I did not realize how big of a fucking chonker Chris Christie was. Like, people have been mocking me on Twitter because I'm apparently fat. Like, this is my, like, I'm kind of chubby, but, like, Christie is a fucking chonker.
To run campaigns. If you're out there in the crowd right now, what's
someone to give 20 super PACs. So I'm looking for that momentum.
they'll do it again.
Yep.
Well, the other piece of this, too, I mean, listen, and I've heard, Noel, it's interesting, I've heard from donors, too, who say, yeah, there is a lot on the line here for the people who are looking for that anti-Trump candidate. Is it going to be Ron DeSantis? Is it going to be Nikki Haley looking to tonight? The other piece of this, and we haven't touched on it much, but it is the biggest thing that drives voters to the polls, and that is the economy. That is the plan that these Republicans have to help people feel better about their money.
Yeah, Hallie, and especially with the Republican-based inflation, big attack on the Biden administration gets people excited. Everyone's feeling it, but also immigration, which
I wonder if they're going to talk about greedflation.
every Republican primary voter cares about in Israel, an issue that is especially important to Christian evangelicals. These are issues that
Christian evangelicals are bigger Zionists than, like, Jewish people are. Like, there are, like, pretty much every Jew on the left is an anti-Zionist. Like, Christian evangelicals, they support Israel because they think that, like, that's where Armageddon is going to happen, and they want to be beamed up into the air to hang out with Scotty.
these candidates are going to use tonight to try to get those voters amped up and get some contributions into their campaigns.
Hogan, explain one thing to me. We're running out of time here. They did a super PAC did a series of ads focusing on the Trump indictments.
You're targeted by this government in some way. Your political positions are now being exploited by the three-letter agencies, by the federal government. If you're for life, they're arresting you. If you're worried about your daughter being raped in a school in Virginia, you're the one who's arrested, not the other person. It's that kind of mentality, and Donald Trump happens to be
So basically just faux victim bullshit.
the tip of the spear, and he's got the bully pip.
Like, none of this stuff is happening. No pro-life activist is going to be arrested unless they're doing stupid shit like trying to blow up an abortion clinic. Like, none of this stuff is happening. What the fuck are you talking about? Your daughter being raped at a school in Virginia? Like, where has this happened? Like, this, they're basically just manufacturing shit out of thin air to gin up, like, violent political sentiment among people who are generally not that intelligent.
To be that voice.
Are going to be back. Big moments.
We're going to look forward to that. But first, the presidential debate moderated by Lester Holt, Kristen Welker, and Hugh Hewitt. It is about to start 20 seconds away. Hallie's going to be here. I'm going to be here. The debate hall is full. This is NBC News Now. It's going to be running all across our platforms. We look forward to every single moment. We thank you for watching.
Tonight.
I love how they're doing this shit up like it's the Super Bowl, because that's basically what this is. Like, American politics is 95% entertainment. All of these people work for the rich. None of these people work for you. But at least you're going to be fucking entertained while these people stand up here and say the most idiotic fucking things.
A critical test in the race for the White House. 5 Republicans battling to become their party's 2024 presidential nominee. The candidates ready to make their case on why they're prepared to be commander-in-chief.
I've never read Trotsky's book on the October Revolution. I don't know why you all think that I just have nothing to do but just sit around and read books all day. Like, I have a life. But bullshit aside, like, I've never read Trotsky's book, so I can't speak on it.
2 wars on the world stage, how they plan to tackle stubborn inflation, and how they can unite a deeply divided electorate.
All white people. Well, I think during the economic little montage, they showed 2 black people. But, like, what do white people think?
Who is best to take on President Biden? And can any of them first beat
a fucking dull pencil could take on President Biden?
Former President Trump, who's far ahead in the polls. The candidates are here. Florida Governor Ron DeSantis, former UN Ambassador Nikki Haley, entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, former New Jersey Governor Chris Christie, and South Carolina Senator Tim Scott.
Bubba Gump.
From NBC News, the Republican presidential debate. Live from the Adrian Arst Center in Miami, Florida.
And good evening, everyone.
Why does this look like a WWE intro? Because, like, that's basically what it is. Like, American politics is nothing but entertainment at this point. Like, there's nothing of substance that's going to be discussed here tonight.
Welcome to
I'm just watching for the meme.
the Republican presidential debate. I'm Lester Holt, anchor of NBC Nightly News.
Good evening. I'm Kristen Welker, moderator of NBC's Meet the Press.
Wow, look at the diversity.
Hello, I'm Hugh Hewitt, host of Salem Radio's The Hugh Hewitt Show.
We are now...
You got 2 black people and a homosexual. I love it. I love America. We are so diverse.
Just 68 days from the Iowa caucuses when Republican primary voters will begin to determine their party's nominee for president. Tonight, we'll question 5 candidates seeking that nomination on how they're best prepared to be commander-in-chief.
Why is Lester Holt out here looking like Al Sharpton? Heck, he looks like a light-skinned Al Sharpton.
And, of course, how best to bring down prices impacting Americans across the country. We have 2 hours for a serious debate on the issues that matter most to Republican voters. Candidates will have 1 minute and 30 seconds for answers and the opportunity for a closing statement. Follow-ups will be at the discretion of all of us at the table, the moderators. Invoking a candidate's name or policy does not necessarily mean the mentioned candidate is entitled to a response. We want to caution all the candidates not to interrupt or speak over your fellow debaters. If you talk over each other, the voters can't hear you.
The voters can't hear you anyways.
And given the critical issues we're facing,
yeah, well, like, where the fuck is Trump? Trump is entertaining. Trump has basically been boycotting these things, but like, at least he would get some memes out of this. Like, he would get us some nice, fresh memes for the Twitter commentary. This is boring. Look at these fucking people.
Specifically on the world stage, we want everyone to hear every word you have to say. Continued interruptions may result in loss of additional questions. And to our audience, please hold your applause so that the candidates can be heard. With that said, let's have a good debate. All right, our first question, the opening question, is one for all of you. Donald Trump is the first ex-president in more than 100 years to run for the White House again, and he remains popular among Republican primary voters as his legal challenges mount. Governor DeSantis, let me begin with you on this one. Speak to Republican voters who are supporting Donald Trump. Why should you and not him be the Republican nominee to face Joe Biden a year from now?
This country is in trouble, and the elites that have put us here.
Bro, you are literally the governor of a state. You are an elite. This always kills me, these politicians talking about the elites, the politicians. Who the fuck are you?
They don't care about you.
Neither do you.
They don't care that you're having to grapple with higher grocery prices or have higher gas prices. They don't care that your
Bro, you're in the pocket of the oil industry. You don't care about high gas prices.
family's less secure because of the open border that's allowed drugs and even terrorists to come.
Oh, shut the fuck up. There have been no terrorists coming over the fucking Mexican border.
Into this country. Well, I care. I am not.
No, you don't.
Not going to sit idly by and let this country continue its downward spiral.
Yes, you are, because you're never going to be president.
We need leadership, and we need it now. I'll take
which you are not going to provide because you're not going to provide the leadership because you're not going to be president.
I'll take the arrows, I'll take the slings, because ultimately it's not about me. It's about you. I will fight for you. I will make sure to lead this country's revival, and I will.
You know, if somebody asked me to draw a picture of a grifting politician, I would literally draw DeSantis. Like, he has.
Win.
I mean, he has the fucking blow-dried hair. He has the fucking hollow mask of a face that shows no emotion whatsoever. It's like this dude is running on batteries. Like, if I was asked to draw a picture of a typical American bullshitting stuffed suit politician with decadent sexual urges, I would draw Ron DeSantis.
For you and your family. Actions speak louder than words. We don't have time for excuses, and it's not something that we're going to be able to have all these distractions. As a veteran, I will get the job done.
As a veteran of torturing people who couldn't fight back at Guantanamo Bay.
Now, if you look where we are now, it's a lot different than we were in 2016. And Donald Trump's a lot different guy than he was in 2016. He owes it to you to be on this stage and explain why he should.
He doesn't owe y'all shit. Like, y'all are the also-rans. He knows he's going to be the nominee, so why would he come wasting his time with y'all?
Get another chance. He should explain why he didn't have Mexico pay for the border wall. He should explain.
Because you cannot force a foreign country to pay for something that they do not want to pay for.
Why he racked up so much debt. He should explain why.
Because that's part of governing an imperialist country. Imperialist countries run on debt.
Why he didn't drain the swamp. And he said Republicans were going to get tired of winning. Well, we saw last night, I'm sick of Republicans losing. In
I'm not.
Florida, I showed how it's done. 1 year ago here, we won a historic victory, including a massive landslide right here in Miami-Dade County. That's how we have to do it. So I promise you this, as the nominee, next November, I'll get the job done. And as president, I will deliver.
Your time is up. Let me turn to Ambassador Haley.
I bet those are all gusanos in the audience.
Let me turn to Ambassador Haley. Why you and not the former president?
Well, I think you look at the fact that we're almost $34 trillion in debt. 60% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck. 50% of American families can't afford diapers.
So what are you going to do about that? Institute socialism?
6 American families can't pay their utility bills. You have the fact that he used to be right on Ukraine and foreign issues. Now he's getting weak in the knees and trying to be friendly again. I think that we've got to go back to the fact that we can't live in the past. We can't live in other headlines. We've got to start focusing on what's going to make America strong and proud. And that's what I'm focused on doing. Let's make sure we pay down our debt. I think we need an accountant in the White House. Let's make sure that we have transparency in the classroom. As a mom, I know what that means. Let's make sure we secure our borders so that our families are safe. Let's get crime down because our families want to know that they can be safe no matter where they go. And as the wife of a combat veteran, I will tell you...
She really pulled the military wife card. When my husband gets back from deployment, he's going to kick your ass if you didn't vote for me. Cut taxes for rich people and put the homeless in a blender.
Military needs to know we have our back, and we need to make sure that America is strong.
You know how to let the military know that you have their back? By not sending them to die in out-of-the-way stupid places for stupid causes.
Thank you very much. And, let me just caution the audience. Let's not go down this road. We've asked you to please, keep restraining yourselves and would be helpful so we can hear the candidates because these are important issues and the voters want and need to hear them. Mr. Ramaswamy, let me turn to you. Please make your case. Why should you?
Why are you in politics? Part of being in politics is like making sure that people can actually understand and hear your positions. People are not going to be able to hear anything that you're saying because they're too busy staring at your gigantic forehead. Go back to being an entrepreneur, aka grifter.
You be the nominee and not the former president.
I think there's something deeper going on in the Republican Party here, and I am upset about what happened last night. We've become a party of...
Okay, never trust a black or brown person who sounds like this. Like, this dude sounds whiter than fucking Chris Christie. Never trust a brown or black person who sounds like this.
Losers at the end of the day. It was a cancer in the Republican establishment. Let's speak the truth. I mean, since Ronna McDaniel took over as chairwoman of the RNC in 2017, we have lost 2018, 2020, 2022, no red wave that never came. We got trounced last night in 2023. And I think that we have to have accountability in our party. For that matter, Ron, if you want to come on stage tonight, you want to look the GOP voters in the eye and tell them you resign, I will yield my time to you. And frankly, look, the people there cheering for losing in the Republican Party. Think about who's moderating this debate. This should be Tucker Carlson, Joe Rogan, and Elon Musk. We'd have 10 times the
Oh my God.
viewership, asking questions that GOP primary voters...
That's how you do a fucking debate? Like, you don't do a debate. What happened last night? There was an election. You don't do a debate by insulting the moderators.
Actually care about and bringing more people into our party. You think the Democrats, and we've got Kristen Welker here, do you think the Democrats would actually hire Greg Gutfeld to host a Democratic debate? They wouldn't do it. And so the fact of the matter is, I mean, Kristen, I'm going to use this time because this is actually about you in the media and the corrupt media establishment. Ask you the Trump-Russia collusion hoax that you pushed.
Okay, Vivek is spicy tonight.
On this network for...
I'm going to watch him. Like, he's spicy tonight. I don't know what he took before he came out here. I don't know if he had an extra bump or what, but he's probably going to be my favorite guy tonight.
For years. Was that real or was that Hillary Clinton made up disinformation? Answer the question. Go.
Mr. Ross.
Sorry. This is how we get...
Bruh, they're going to end up putting his ass out. Like this blatantly disrespectful.
our country back.
She's just sitting there.
Need accountability because this media rigged the 2016 election. They rigged the 2020 election with the Hunter Biden laptop story.
Mr. Ramaswamy,
and they're going to rig this election.
Your time is up.
Accountability.
Let me turn to
That's
Governor Christie.
This guy is a fascist, but he's at least an entertaining fascist.
Why you, audience, let's not do this. Let's not do this. Let's let the candidate speak. Governor Christie, why you and not former President Trump?
Well, Lester, look, you said it at the beginning of the debate.
Look, the Trump administration, what is that? It's a fucking glorified crew. They're not a real family. They're not a real family. You've gotta understand. I go back in this family to fucking Bush. All right.
We are dealing with extraordinarily important issues facing this country right now. We have our greatest ally in the Middle East under fire from a
Yeah, like fucking Israel. What's happening over there? Huh? You got this fucking Indian prick over here who's like, but we've got real problems. We've got real problems in this family. Like fucking Trump. What the fuck? He's a no-show to a meet? Jesus fucking Christ.
terrorist group that has committed to wiping them and every Jewish person in this world.
He needs to read the 2017 charter. He has not read the 2017 charter. He's been too busy stuffing his face with gabagool.
Off the map. We have Ukraine with Vladimir Putin, a communist KGB dictator.
Lord help me.
Who wants to put the old band back together. He's starting in Ukraine, and he's going to move to the Baltics and Poland after that.
That is not Putin's intent in invading Ukraine. Putin literally said that the Soviet Union was a disaster.
We have inflation in this country that is choking every American family that wants to try to rise up.
Just like you're choking on gabagool right now.
And give their children.
What size shirt is that? Like, how are you able to button that shirt all the way up? It has to be custom made for your fat ass neck.
A better life. And tonight, we need to decide which president is going to be the one to tackle the big issues. Who's going to make
I'd hate to get tackled by you, bro.
Make this country look once again, not just inward, but look outward at the world and say America is the country, the indispensable nation that makes this
indispensable. Indispensable. Something that's indispensable is something you can't do without. We can do without America just fine. As a matter of fact, the continued existence of America is like literally a drag on humanity. We can do just fine without America.
Safer world.
Billions of people agree.
And in a safer world, American innovation, American hard work has always been the thing that
no, it hasn't.
Has driven our country to greater things. I'm going to be the president who will do those big things.
You're not going to be president, Christie.
We're not going to be small, and I'll say this about Donald Trump. Anybody who's going to be spending the next year and a half of their life focusing on keeping themselves out of jail and courtrooms cannot lead this party or this country, and it needs to be said plainly.
Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Senator Scott. Senator Scott, you've said former President Trump can't
Of course the black guy goes last.
win. Make your case to Republican voters.
Well, certainly. What I would say without any question is that the truth
Never trust a black man with a southern accent.
of my life destroys the lies of the radical left. We need a president and a candidate.
This dude's like head grows straight down into his neck. These are some funny looking ass people. Like his body, his head and neck is like straight down. What lab did they make these people
Will
at?
actually help our base solidify and attract independent voters into our party. The Great Opportunity Party is now winning back African-American voters and Hispanic voters because we are working.
Yeah, his head is literally shaped like a dick. Like that's exactly what he is. He is a dick head.
On a foundation based on faith, our nation is facing some deep challenges. It is the loss of faith in this nation that is a part of the erosion that we're seeing every single day. It's restoring faith, restoring our Christian values that will help this nation.
Okay, this country is basically going the way of Europe in regards to religion. Like, we have a shitload more Muslims. We have a shitload more agnostics and atheists. Like, this is not going to be a Christian country by the middle of the century. Like, Zoomers are probably the most a-religious group in human history.
Once again become the city on the hill. When Ronald Reagan talked about the city on the hill, he was coming from Matthew 5. When President Lincoln talked about a house divided, that was Mark. Our founding documents speak to the importance of a faith foundation. You don't have to be a Christian for America to work for you, but America does not work without a faith-filled Judeo-Christian foundation.
Bruh, that same faith-filled Judeo-Christian foundation had us toiling in the fucking fields. you're pretty dark. Your ass would have been in the fields. Like, that stuff did not do anything for us. I understand you pulling the whole Republican grift thing, a black guy in the Republican Party. That's a novelty these days, but you don't have to ride their dick so hard, bro. Just get your money and go. You're never going to be president. These people are not going to nominate you.
I would be the president that helps us restore faith in God, faith in each other, and faith in our future.
So you want a theocracy.
Without that focus, none of the issues, the policies matter. We have to get back to being a nation that is, in fact, the city on the hill.
America isn't a nation. There is no ethnic group called Americans. America is a prison house of nations.
Believes in each other enough for us to fight for that future.
Senator Scott, thank you. We're going to turn now to the challenges facing the next commander-in-chief. You'll all be fielding questions first from me and the Republican Jewish Coalition, and then from Kristen and Hugh. So as we continue forward, the Israel-Hamas war is barely a month old. Tonight, Israeli troops are fighting inside Gaza City with over 200 hostages who remain captive there, and civilian casualties mount inside Gaza. As President of the United States, what would you be urging Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do at this moment? Governor DeSantis.
I would be telling Bibi, finish the job once and for all with these butchers, Hamas.
Okay, so Ron DeSantis, alumnus of Gitmo, wants genocide. Okay, par for the course.
They're terrorists. They're massacring innocent people. They would wipe every Jew off the globe.
No, they don't. You all should have read the 2017 charter.
If they could. He cannot live with that threat right by his country. The Hamas should release every hostage and they should unconditionally surrender. I'm sick of hearing the
Why would they do that?
media. I'm sick of hearing other people blame Israel just for defending itself. We will stand with Israel in word and in deed, in public and in private. And I can tell you, as governor, I actually did something about it. Biden's neglect has been atrocious. We had Floridians that were over there after the attack. He left them stranded. They couldn't get flights out. So I scrambled resources in Florida.
You shouldn't have went over there.
I sent planes over to Israel, and I brought back over 700 people to safety. There could have been more hostages had we not acted. And I'll tell you this, I met the
There should have been more hostages. You shouldn't have done that.
first plane load when they came to Florida, and one of the mothers pointed to a 6-year-old daughter, and she said, my daughter had been saying the last 2 nights, Mommy, I don't want to hear any more bombs, no more rockets. I just want to get back to Florida.
Wow, you just want to get back to Florida. Nobody has said that in the history of humanity. Stop lying. Pretty sure the Palestinians want to stop hearing bombs, too.
So there's a difference between words and deeds. We acted, and we saved lives.
Thank you. Ambassador Haley, what would you do? What would you be urging Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to do? Would you consider humanitarian pause, for example?
The first thing I said to him when it happened was I said, finish them. Finish them.
Finish them.
And the reason is I worked on this every day when I was at the United Nations.
Every day, in between your 3 martini lunches and Coke bumps.
And we have to remember that they have to, 1, eliminate Hamas, 2, support
You're never going to do that.
Israel with whatever they need, whenever they need it, and 3, make sure we bring our hostages home. We need to be very clear-eyed to know there would be no Hamas without Iran. There would be no Hezbollah.
There would be no Hamas without Israel.
Without Iran. There would not be the Houthis without Iran. And there wouldn't be the Iranian militias in Syria and Iraq that are trying to hit our military men and women if it hadn't been for Iran. And who is funding Iran right now? China is buying oil from Iran. Russia is getting drones and missiles from Iran. And there is an unholy
This chick is going to start World War III.
alliance. We need to be clear-eyed.
Like, I'm serious. Like, look at her maniacal eyes. This chick is going to start World War III. Yeah, if they make her president, this chick is going to start World War III.
The last thing we need to do is to tell Israel what to do. The only thing we should be doing is supporting them and eliminating Hamas. It is not that Israel needs America. America needs Israel. They are the tip
What exactly do we need Israel for? Like, what, bruh?
of the spear when it comes to this Islamic terrorism. And we
Oh, okay, so you're acknowledging their role as an imperial outpost. that is increasingly becoming an annoying imperial outpost for certain groups within the United States government. Okay, good deal. Very smart, Miss Haley.
We need to make sure that we have their backs in that process.
All right, thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, any daylight between
It's basically a garrison, pretty much.
you and the candidates we just heard in this issue on what you would tell the Prime Minister?
Not in terms of what I would tell the Prime Minister, no. In fact, I would go one step further. The founding vision of Israel was based on the idea that they don't want to depend on anybody else's sympathy or direction in defending themselves.
Yeah, the Indian Brahmin is about to go ham here.
So what I would tell Bibi is that Israel has the right and the responsibility to defend itself. I would tell him to smoke those terrorists on his southern border, and then I'll tell him as President of the United States, I'll be smoking the terrorists on our southern border.
There are no terrorists on our southern border.
That's his responsibility. This is our responsibility.
There's cartels on our southern border, and those cartels operate with CIA permission and CIA guidance. Like, where the fuck did Los Zetas come from? Like, bruh.
That's how we move forward.
That's why there's no, like, strong border wall. Doug Valentine said that if Trump actually built a border wall, the CIA would build trapdoors in it. Like, these people, I know these people understand, like, the foreign and geostrategic and geopolitical shit that's at stake here. Like, we're not just going to build a big-ass chunk of concrete across the border because it's important for U.S. intelligence and U.S. military and U.S. drug assets to get in and out of Mexico.
But I want to be careful to avoid making the mistakes from the neocon establishment of the past. Corrupt politicians in both parties spent trillions, killed millions, made billions for themselves in places like Iraq and Afghanistan, fighting wars that sent thousands of our sons and daughters, people my age, to die in wars that did not advance anyone's interests, adding $7 trillion to our national debt. And Joe Biden sold off our foreign policy. Joe Biden's son.
The faux progressivism, that's called fascism.
Hunter Biden got a $5 million bribe from Ukraine. That's why we're sending $200 billion back to that same country. The fact of the matter is the Republican Party is not that much better. You have the likes of Nikki Haley, who stepped down from her time at the UN. Bankrupt or in debt was her family. Then she becomes a military contractor. She joins the board of Boeing and otherwise, and is now a...
Look at how she's looking at it. Why don't you just shut up, Abu? Like, why don't you just go back and manage your 7-Eleven and let the big girls run the party? All right? You don't know what you're talking about, huh?
Multi-millionaire. So I think that that's wrong when Republicans do it or Democrats do it. That's the choice we face. Do you want a leader from a different generation who's going to put this country first, or do you want Dick Cheney in 3-inch heels?
All right, Mr.
In which case we've got two of them on stage tonight.
Oh, that's right. I keep forgetting Nikki Haley is Indian, too.
Thank you. Senator Scott, yes. Senator, same question to you about, you're the president, you're on the phone in the Oval Office with the Prime Minister, you tell him what?
Well, number one, I would tell Prime Minister Netanyahu, not only do you have the responsibility and the right.
Yeah, she is. I think she's Sikh or something from Punjab, but I forgot that. I thought she was just a white woman.
To wipe Hamas off of the map. We will support you. We will be there with you. We'll stand shoulder to shoulder. There will be no daylight. But I would change the station a little bit, though, and head back home to America. I would say to President Biden, diplomacy only is a weak strategy. Appeasement leads to war.
I agree for different reasons.
From President Obama to President Biden, Obama sent millions to Iran. Frankly, President Biden has sent billions to Iran. That is why I've said that there's blood dripping from the hands of President Obama and President Biden. I would tell President Biden with great clarity, if you want to stop the 40+ attacks on military personnel in the Middle East, you have to strike in Iran.
Maybe you should pull the military personnel out of the Middle East. I mean, that's the smartest way to stop attacks on American troops in the Middle East. Make the American troops not be there anymore.
If you want to make a difference, you cannot just continue to have strikes in Syria on warehouses. You actually have to cut off the head of the snake, and the head of the snake is Iran and not simply their proxies. In order for us to have a powerful response from America, we have to be in a position of strength. As President of the United States, my foreign policy is simple. You cannot negotiate with evil. You have to destroy it.
All right.
Again, I agree for different reasons.
Senator Scott, thank you. Governor Christie, I want to get you to weigh in here.
Look, Lester, these problems are so big and serious that the first thing I would say to
Just like you, super big and serious.
to Prime Minister Netanyahu is pretty simple. America is here, no matter what it is you need at any time to preserve the state of Israel. Remember that Hamas's main goal is to get rid of Israel, is to get Israel absolutely off the map. Now, there are three things I think I would say to him when he asked for advice. The first I would say is that it is absolutely your obligation to protect the territorial integrity of Israel. Secondly, to make sure you protect the security and the safety of your people. Every time something happens to compromise either one of those things, it creates greater unrest in the entire region. Second, you must go in and make sure that Hamas can never do this again. The fact is that Israel...
If it's not Hamas, it's going to be somebody else. But you're still going to have an armed resistance. Unless you totally wipe out the Palestinian people, which is not going to happen. You're just going to have Hamas under a different name because people who are oppressed are heavily inclined to armed resistance, especially if you make negotiation and peaceful protest sort of irrelevant.
And their intelligence community failed. They failed here, and they failed the people of the state of Israel. And so we need to work closely and better together to make sure, one, that they're degraded, and two, that we know everything that's going on inside the Gaza Strip when it's going on so that something like this can't happen to kill.
Yeah, let's just place an entire fucking nation under surveillance. That's totally not going to piss them off. That's totally not going to make sure that this doesn't happen again. It's going to make sure that it happens with more frequency, you fat ding-dong.
1,400 individuals again. And the third thing is to keep your eye on the ball. Make sure that we continue to isolate Iran. Work with the reasonable nations.
You can't isolate Iran because Iran is going to do is draw ever closer to Russia and China. Like, that's the thing. The United States is not the only fucking fish in the pond anymore. You've got China and you've got Russia who are able to provide another axis. Why do you think so many countries in Africa, like the coup governments in West Africa, they're turning towards Russia and China because the United States is trying to cut them off? They're basically saying, fuck the United States. So, bruh, you're dumb. Like, it's not the fucking 90s anymore. Like, that's gone. So we have two rising capitalist imperialist superpowers that these people can do business with. All that's going to happen is the United States is going to be isolated, and the United States is going to have ever more problems.
In the Middle East, the other Arab nations who want to partner with you, and make sure that we continue to isolate Iran so that their only friends in the world are the part of the evil foursome: China, Russia, Iran, and North Korea.
Governor Christie, thank you very much. And we're going to continue in this vein right now with a question from Matthew Brooks, the CEO of the Republican Jewish Coalition, a partner of the Republican National Committee in this debate. Here it is.
Given attacks by Iranian-backed proxy groups on U.S. military bases in Syria and Iraq, attacks that have wounded approximately 24 of our U.S. servicemen, do you support the use of military force by the United States against Iran?
Governor Haley, would you please answer that?
Yes, I'd first like to say they're 5-inch heels, and I don't wear them unless you can run in them.
We've got two of you on stage.
The second thing that I will say is...
Was that supposed to be a joke? I'm sorry. Ha ha.
I wear heels. They're not for a fashion statement. They're for ammunition. What we need to be doing for Iraq and Syria is, first of all, the idea that our men and women could be targeted and that we've
If you don't want your men and women targeted, get them the fuck out of the Middle East.
allowed almost 100 hits to happen under Biden's watch is unthinkable. We need to understand this is Iran giving the green light, telling them what to do, and we shouldn't be doing the tit for tat like what Joe Biden has done. We need to go and take out their infrastructure that they are using to make those strikes with so they can never do it again.
Yeah, let's just start another war. Like I said, this chick is going to start World War III.
Iran responds to strength. You punch them one and you punch them hard and they will back off. But what we
You don't know shit about the history of the Persians.
don't need is
These people had the one of the largest land-based empires in the history of the world. And you really say like, compared to Persia, compared to Iran, America is an upstart. Okay, we've only been around for not even 300 years. This country has been around for almost 2,000. Like, even before Christ was born, this country was old. Okay? Like, you don't know what the fuck you're talking about. Just like you want to fight China. Like, China was fighting wars when the ancestors of George Washington and Ben Franklin were running around in the hills and dales of England, painting themselves with woad and throwing themselves at the Romans naked.
Biden falling all over himself to get back in the Iran deal. Him giving $6 billion to get 5 hostages home. Him telling Netanyahu now that he needs a pause or a ceasefire. We don't need him going and sitting there tiptoeing around Iran because he thinks they're going to do something. You don't
They are going to do something. Keep fucking with them.
respond to an enemy and a terrorist with fear. You respond with strength. When you do that, that's when the world pays attention, and that's when Iran stops.
Thank you, Governor DeSantis.
Iran is not going to stop. Like, unless you totally destroy this country, if all you have to do is leave them the fuck alone. Stop this saber-rattling rhetoric. It's not scaring Iran.
If I can continue with you. Just today, the U.S. launched another one of its limited airstrikes against targets in Syria, this time Iranian-linked facility. How far would you go militarily to hold Iran accountable?
Well, first, Matt, thanks for your question, and I appreciate what you've done over the last month. I know it's been very difficult for the community, and appreciate you guys rallying together in difficult times. I actually served in
I've never seen this type of support for the black community. It would be nice if DeSantis, well, actually, I don't want any well wishes from DeSantis, the devil. But like when the police kill one of us, I would like if a Republican politician would come out and say, "Oh, I know what you guys have been through, and I really appreciate the strength that you guys are showing." But no, it's just calls for suppression. This guy has banned critical race theory in Florida and has gutted diversity, equity, and inclusion programs. But yes, he's very concerned about the plight of Jews.
Iraq back in the day, and we had Al-Qaeda in Iraq. You had Shia militias that were funded by Iran that were killing hundreds and hundreds of U.S. troops. And as commander-in-chief, I am not going to put our troops in harm's way.
So you're going to pull them out from the places in the world where they should not be?
Unless you're willing to defend them with everything you have. Biden has them out there. They're sitting ducks. He's doing glancing blows. That's just inviting more attacks from the Iranians.
The presence of American troops in the Middle East invites attacks. Like, it's basically like just pushing a hornet's nest. They're going to fly out and they're going to sting the shit out of you.
I would say you harm a hair on the head of an American service member, and you are going to have hell to pay. We are not just going to sit there and let our service members be sitting ducks, and that's true whether it's Iran or whether it's any country on the world.
Duran.
We have to be strong, and we have to defend the people who defend us.
All right, thank you, Governor. Now our second and final question from Matthew Brooks of the Republican Jewish Coalition. Please watch.
Jewish students across the country are threatened and under attack.
Oh, here we go.
What do you say to Jewish students on college campuses who feel...
Oh, by the way, a Palestinian student was run over last week by somebody who was saying, "Fuck your people." So are they going to show the same concern for people of Arab descent?
Unsafe given the dramatic rise in anti-Semitism? And what do you say to university presidents and college presidents who have not met the moral clarity moment to forcefully condemn Hamas?
What do you mean? The purpose of a college president is to run his college, not make comments on foreign policy matters.
Terrorism.
Mr. Ramaswamy, would you like to take that one?
Absolutely. I think the scourge of anti-Semitism across this country, including at places like my alma maters and places like Brooklyn Bridge in New York, it's sad to see.
Brooklyn Bridge?
But here's what history teaches us. Anti-Semitism is a symptom of a deeper cancer in a country and a society that is lost, and we are lost.
So are they going to have all of this smoke for racism in the United States or anti-Palestinian sentiment? Like, I don't think anybody has said the word Palestine on this stage tonight.
Years ago, when I wrote my first book, Woke Inc., I was talking about they were chanting death to America, death to white people, death to Christians. Nobody
You neither.
was waking up back then. Now it's even bad. Now they're saying death to Israel and worse. So it is wrong, but we have to get to the root cause here. Now, I think it's really
No, the root cause is the continued existence of Israel.
important that we do this through leadership, not censorship. Leadership means fill that void with purpose and meaning.
Well, Ramaswamy is actually sounding pretty sensible here. Like everybody else just wants doxing and anti-Zionist Palestinian supporting students to be kicked out of colleges, but here he is opposing censorship. Oh, he sounded like he's a nut, he's a flake, he's a fascist, but he's sounding somewhat rational.
Dilute this wokeism and anti-Semitism to irrelevance. These kids, they have no idea what the heck they're even talking about when they're siding with Hamas over Israel. They are fools. But I also want to caution here, if we go the direction of Ron DeSantis or Nikki Haley, with whom I respectfully disagree on this issue, pro-censorship,
Right, you haven't been respectful all night.
telling student groups to disband, mark my words.
You're acting like a bitchy little queen up here. Nikki Haley.
Soon they will say if you question a vaccine and its side effects, you're bioterrorist.
Soon you're going to start rolling your neck and snapping your fingers.
Soon they will say that if you show up at a school board meeting, you're a domestic terrorist. Soon if they say that J6 prisoners should be released, you're an insurrectionist terrorist. So that's where this road ends. We don't quash this with censorship because that creates a worse underbelly. We quell it through leadership by calling it out. These university administrators have lost their way, and we need leadership at the top in the United States of America that restores our founding values and that has no place for this kind of anti-Semitic hate. That's where I stand while respecting our Constitution.
Your time is up. Senator Scott, let me get you.
So he's appearing to be the smartest guy on the stage here tonight. Everybody else just wants, arrest them, shoot them in the back of the head, take them to Gitmo.
You to weigh in on what you just heard.
Well, let me just say to every single university president in America, federal funding is a privilege, not a right. Number one.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Number two.
So you're literally going to cut off universities' federal funding because people do not toe the Zionist line? Honestly, I wish black people had this much power. Like, I wish if you had a professor who promotes eugenics shit about black people or any other non-white ethnicity or race, like, I wish that we had the power to have a major presidential candidate. Well, I'm not calling Tim Scott a major presidential candidate, but I wish we had the power to have your funding cut off.
To every student who've come to our country on a visa to a college campus, your visa is a privilege, not a right.
No, it's not a privilege, because if you fucked up people's countries so bad that they cannot get an education of their own, that they have to come here, it's kind of repaying them. Like, why do you think a kid from Ecuador or a kid from Yemen is coming to the United States? Because America has fucked their country so much that they can't get a college education. Like, people do not just want to uproot and leave their homes and come live in the belly of the beast. They come live here because this is where the money is. This is where they can get a job. This is where they can get a college education. You can do all of that here because America has looted and stolen from the rest of the world. So don't throw that shit out there, brother. You know better. And yes, this guy is still black. I have to call him brother because I'm doing the whole Cornel West thing. But maybe I should just start calling him Tom because that's what he is.
Number three, any campus that allows for...
Wait a minute. Look at how Vivek is looking at Tim.
Right. Number three.
They fucked. They have fucked.
Any campus.
Look at that. Look at that. Bruh. They have fucked.
That allows for anti-Semitism and hate, to allow students to encourage terrorism, mass murder, and genocide, you should lose your federal funding today, period. To all the students on visas who are encouraging Jewish genocide, I would deport you from those campuses. We have to stand strong with our Jewish Americans. At the end of the day, we should not.
Again, not a word for Palestinian Americans who are actually going through like somebody was literally run over with their car simply because they were Arab. But all of this concern is for the Zionists. All of this concern is for the Israelis. Like, I guess the Palestinian people are just chopped liver. They don't exist.
Have our Jewish students in a library being told to hide on our streets in New York. A Jewish citizen has the right to walk on the streets of America with no fear. They have the right to go to college campuses, go to class, and not fear.
What do they have to fear?
We will restore that. I started working on anti-Semitism on college campuses in
What the fuck was Ron over his mouth?
2017, because even then there was a rise of anti-Semitism on college campuses. We must force the people off those campuses and
Senator
frankly,
Scott, thank you. Let me
out of our country.
Let me turn to the Governor DeSantis here. What do you think about what he just said?
I was the first presidential candidate to say, if you are here on a student visa as a foreign national, you're making common cause with Hamas, I'm canceling your visa and I'm sending you home. No questions asked.
So these people are supposed to be all about personal liberty and freedom of speech, because constitutional rights apply to people who are here as residents or in student visas or whatever. Like, you cannot just deport people because of stuff that they said. This is basic pandering. Like, that is unconstitutional as fuck. You cannot do that. So should we deport people who have served it or who support the IDF?
Second, I have friends here in Florida who their kids do not feel safe even going to university campus at all outside of the state of
That's their problem.
Florida. You have Jewish students fleeing for their lives at
Oh my God, give me a break.
Cooper Union. Joe Biden should have the Department of Justice on these college campuses and holding the universities accountable for civil rights violations. When you should not have money going to these places. I already acted in Florida. We had a group, Students for Justice of Palestine. They said they are common cause with Hamas. They said, we're not just in...
Students for Justice in Palestine has never issued a statement in solidarity with Hamas.
Solidarity, this is what we are. We deactivated them. We're not going to use state tax...
How could you...
dollars to fund...
You cannot deactivate a student group like that.
Jihad? No way. And what is Biden doing? Not only is he not helping the Jewish students who are being persecuted, he is launching an initiative to combat so-called Islamophobia. No, it's the
Because Islamophobia is a bigger problem in the U.S. than anti-Semitism is. You literally have, there's a fucking 6-year-old kid stabbed to death in Chicago because people thought that there was going to be an international day of jihad. So a landlord ran into one of his tenants' apartments and stabbed the kid and his mother to death. A Palestinian student was run over. You have people that are showing up with Zionist flags starting fights. Like, you got Zionists that'll show up and shoot at Palestinian solidarity rallies. Like, these people are going to protests just to start shit so that they can call the cops and get people arrested. Islamophobia is a bigger problem in the United States, and it has been a bigger problem in the United States since 9/11 than fucking anti-Semitism. Does anti-Semitism still exist in the U.S.? Of course. But is it like a major life-threatening issue? No, it is not. No matter how much you want it to be, it is not. They're saying that it is because Israel is a major strategic ally of the U.S. So Israel has money to stage this massive propaganda campaign. There's a big-ass billboard and I see constantly on my way to work talking about the hostages. Like, where are these things from Palestine? So not only are you trying to wipe these people off the face of the earth, you're trying to criminalize those who are expressing solidarity and spreading news about what's happening with them. Absolutely ghoulish and horrific.
anti-Semitism that's spiraling out of control. That is what we have to confront. And as president, I can tell you this, we are not going to stand for this on college campuses any longer.
All right, Governor, thank you. Let me turn to Governor Christie, and considering what he just said, you led a state with a sizable Muslim population. Last month, as you know, a 6-year-old Palestinian-American boy was killed in Illinois by his landlord. His mother was also stabbed more than a dozen times in what has been charged as a hate crime. What do you say to Muslim Americans who are also feeling afraid for their safety right now?
Lester, I'm the only one on the stage who's actually had experience in dealing with this. I was appointed by President Bush to be the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey on September 10th, 2001. And when I took over that job after the September 11th attacks, I had to deal with a situation in our state that was explosive. We're the most ethnically diverse state in this country. And so first, we heard credible reports about Jewish students and synagogues being threatened in our state in the aftermath of 9/11. We made sure that we sent federal agents to those synagogues and we protected them, and the same thing should be being done now. At the very same time, I personally went from mosque to mosque in New Jersey and met with the leaders of those mosques and with the members of the mosques. And I said to them, law enforcement is on your side to protect you, regardless of your religion, if you are going to comply with the law. And we developed fabulous relationships with Muslim Americans all across.
Meaning that he made it easy for informants and snitches and spies to be recruited from mosques.
Across the state of
Like that has been the FBI's relationship to the Islamic community. They've basically tried to entrap these people since 9/11 and get them in trouble. So you're sending basically troops to defend synagogues. You're not requesting that they don't have kahanas or any other loony type elements that are in the synagogues, but you're treating the Muslims as criminals. Double standard.
And we stopped any hate crimes that were going on either against Jewish Americans in New Jersey or Muslim Americans in New Jersey. It takes leadership, Lester, to know how to do this. You must work with both sides. Both sides need to know it, but let us never have a false moral equivalence between Hamas and Hezbollah and the Jewish people. The Jewish people stand for right and justice, and Hamas and Hezbollah stand for death.
Governor Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley,
I wonder if any of these people have ever read any documents that have been written by Hamas or Hezbollah. I would not put money on them having read any of this stuff.
what do you say to Americans who are simply afraid right now in this current environment that we're talking about?
I think, you look at the country, and the country is all out of sorts. I think, look at what these kids are dealing with on college campuses. What makes me so angry is not only do you have the kids barricaded in the library, they've said they were going to shoot up the kosher dining hall. You've got kids' dorm rooms who are being set on fire because they have something related to Israel on their doors. No person should ever feel in danger like this. And this is what I would say about our college presidents, is if the KKK were doing this, every college president would be up in arms. This is no different. You should treat it exactly the same. Anti-Semitism is just as awful as racism, and we've got to make sure they're protected. And for everybody that's protesting on these college campuses in favor of Hamas, let me remind you something. Hamas said death to Israel and death to America. They hate and would kill you too. And
they wouldn't kill me.
The idea that they're talking about genocide for the Jewish people, that's not the values of America. That's not us. We're better than that. We don't need to celebrate terrorists. We don't need to celebrate.
Like half of our presidents have been raving anti-Semites. What the fuck are you talking about, Nikki?
Genocide. We don't need to celebrate violence towards anybody. We need to go back and soul search in our country.
Weren't you just talking about how you wanted to bomb Iran off the face of the map? Now you're saying that we don't celebrate violence towards anybody? Somebody needs to change your batteries.
And remember what we are about. And we are about taking care of people, not going and making them live in fear because some other terrorist activity says they want to destroy them.
Ambassador, thank you. Kristen.
Lester, thank you. This is another question for the entire field, so you will all get a chance to respond. But Senator Scott, I'd like to start with you. The United States has given Ukraine financial and military support since the war began more than 600 days ago. President
They're not real, they're holograms.
Zelensky told me on Sunday, if Russia isn't stopped now, quote, the price will be higher for the United States, and Americans would be forced to, quote, send your sons and daughters to defend NATO countries. Senator Scott, where do you stand on more funding for Ukraine?
I certainly have been very supportive of Ukraine. I believe that ultimately we should make sure that the President of the United States states what is America's national vital interest in Ukraine. It is actually in degrading the Russian military. We've been very effective using our resources and our weaponry and the incredibly high price of Ukrainian blood to achieve that objective. Every day we get closer to the degradation of the Russian military, and that's good news. But the American people are frustrated that they do not have a president who reminds us and tells us, where's the accountability? Where are those dollars? How are those dollars being spent? We need those answers for us to continue to see the support for Ukraine. And at the same time, I would say that a package that's been offered by the president for Ukraine and Israel, that's the wrong approach. We need to focus specifically on providing Israel with the $14 billion that they need so that we show the world that we are 100% undeniably standing shoulder to shoulder with Israel. And then as we turn away from that direct support for Israel, we should go to our southern border and close our southern border with the resources necessary. I believe.
So you want a totally closed border. You care about the economy, but you want to shut the border down entirely. I guarantee you a lot of southwestern ranchers and farmers and construction companies are going to be highly upset with you if that happens. Like, the entire fucking economy down there is dependent on migrant labor from south of the border. Like, that's why it's still coming. Like, these people do not have an understanding of the actual situation at the border.
That we have.
Like, there's no fucking terrorists coming over the border. You know where terrorists are coming from? Like, they would come across one of the most heavily militarized borders on the face of the earth. They would come from Canada. Like, they would come across from Canada. Like, you could literally walk across the border between Canada and South Dakota. You could not just walk across the fucking Mexican border easily.
Sleeper terrorist cells in America. Thousands of people have come from Yemen, Iran, Syria, and Iraq. If we are going to deal
Where is your evidence of this?
With the national security emergency at our border, we have to do it now.
Senator Scott, thank you. But just to be very clear, if you were president, if you were in the Oval Office today, would you sign off on more military funding for Ukraine, or would you discontinue it?
Discontinue it.
Bottom line is we have to first have the level of accountability that allows the American people to understand where the resources have gone. Number one. Number two, after we have that responsibility taken care of and accountability, then we have an opportunity to look at the overall strategy that helps us degrade the Russian military while we use our resources, and frankly, keeping our NATO partners safe from the Russian military is absolutely essential.
Look at Vivek laughing at him. You're such a bratty little twink.
As you understand, Article 5 would require...
No, Vivek is just a fucking troll. That's what he is.
...to support and to defend NATO, our troops on the ground. The fastest way for us to eliminate that possibility is for us to destroy, to the extent possible, the Russian military. By doing so, we actually achieve the objective of keeping our military home. And that's good news.
Thank you, Senator Scott. Mr. Ramaswamy, are you persuaded by President Zelensky's urgent new plea? Where do you stand on more funding?
I'm absolutely unpersuaded. And I'm actually enjoying watching the Ukraine hawks quietly, delicately tiptoe back from their position as this thing has unwound into a disaster. The first half of this race, I was the only person standing for it. Now they're actually quietly coming around to being more cautious, as they should. Level with the American people here. Ukraine is not a paragon of democracy. This is a country that has banned 11 opposition parties. It is...
Holy shit. Is Vivek a tanky?
consolidated all media into one state TV media arm. That's not democratic. It has threatened not to hold elections this year unless the U.S. forks over more money. That is not democratic. It has celebrated a Nazi in its ranks, the comedian in cargo pants, a man called Zelensky, doing it in their own ranks. That is not democratic. More facts for you that you won't hear from the mainstream in either party or the mainstream media. The regions of Ukraine that are occupied by Russia right now, in the Donbass, Luhansk, Donetsk, these are Russian-speaking regions that have not even been part of Ukraine.
Holy shit. This dude is a fucking MAGA communist.
Since 2014, that other people probably couldn't name those provinces for you. Those are the hard facts. And so to frame this as some kind of battle between good versus evil, don't buy it. And I'd like the likes of the sharpest of the war hawks on Ukraine, Nikki Haley, to have some accountability and answer. Do you want to use U.S. taxpayer money to fund the banning of Christians? That is actually what's happening. They're using the Ukrainian Orthodox Church. They have banned them. The Ukrainian parliament just did this last week, supported by our dollars. And I think you owe it to the American people, Nikki, to at least this one time at least condemn.
Thank you. That's time.
At least to condemn their banning of Christians.
Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, thank you. We asked the questions. Ambassador Haley,
well, she deserves to
what
answer.
is your take on more funding for Ukraine?
I am telling you, Putin and President Xi are salivating at the thought that someone like that could become president. They would love to see
The fact of the matter is she doesn't answer
So this
the
is
question.
what I will tell you.
We're driving Russia
first of all,
into China's
let's
hands
remember,
because of these...
Bruh. This guy's a pet sock. This guy's a patriotic socialist. Like, I guarantee you, he has Haas speaking in his ear right now. The little microphone in his ear. Like, Haas is giving him talking points through this fucking microphone.
It's your time to talk. The ambassador has the floor. Ambassador,
Thank you.
please.
The first thing I'll tell you is we all remember what that thug did when he invaded Ukraine. We all know that 500,000 people have died because of Putin. And here is a freedom-loving, pro-American country that is fighting for its survival and its democracy. No, I don't think we should give them cash. I think we should give them the equipment and the ammunition to win. And I'll tell you, if Biden had done it when they first asked for it, this war would be over. But let's also remember this. When you left Afghanistan in shambles and left them with a ton of weapons and money, it's not that we left, it's how we left. When you look at Ukraine, don't think for a second, now everybody wants to move away from Ukraine. They'll want to move away from Israel a year from now. America can never be so arrogant to think we don't need friends. After 9/11, we need...
America is not good at making friends. America sucks at making friends. Even our friends turn around and bite us in the ass when the money runs out.
Needed a lot of friends. Now is the time to get partnerships. This unholy alliance between Russia, Ukraine, and China is real. There is a reason the Taiwanese want us to support the Ukrainians. It's because they know that China is coming after them next. There is a reason Ukrainians want us to support Israelis, because they know that if Iran...
Because shit follows shit. I'm not saying that the Ukrainians are shit. I support Ukraine, okay? I'm not a MAGA com. I'm not a Putinite. I'm not a Vatnik. But, like, just from what I've seen, the Ukrainians are very, very anti-communist. Like, I got into it with a bunch of them yesterday. They got mad because I have a hammer and sickle in my Twitter bio. And they were like, yeah, don't do a drinking game around debates. But, like, they were like, oh, why do you have the hammer and sickle? So very, very... anti-communist people. But like, if a country invades you, you have a right to fight back. But should we keep dumping money into this pit? Absolutely not. The Ukrainians want us to support Israel, and the Taiwanese want us to support Ukraine and Israel because they're basically an axis of neoliberalism.
Wins, Russia wins.
Ambassador,
we have to see the combination of the three.
Ambassador, thank you. Governor Christie, what is your take, and how long should Americans be expected to help fund the war in Ukraine?
Kirsten, let's remember the last time that we turned our back on a shooting war in Europe. It bought us just a couple of years. And then 500,000
Wait, so we're going to have a fucking Pearl Harbor incident?
Americans were killed in Europe to defeat Hitler. This is not a choice. This is the price we pay for being the...
He's got to fucking waddle like a turkey. Not a choice.
leaders of the free world. And the fact is, this alliance is not just with Russia and China. Governor Haley knows this. Iran is in the middle of this as well, and so is North Korea. And they are all working to support Russia right now. And the reason they're doing it is because dictators work together. People who believe in democracy work together. We must stand with all of those that are standing.
Taiwan, Israel, and Ukraine are not democracies. When one of these people says democracy, what they mean is neoliberalism.
Democracy and freedom in this world. And by the way, let's remind everybody of this. In 1992, this country made a promise to Ukraine. We said if you return nuclear missiles that were part of the old Soviet Union to Russia and they invade you, we will protect you. An American promise that's 31 years old is no different than an American promise that's made tonight on this stage.
So where's my 40 acres and a mule? That was an American promise too.
We need to stand by it. And those of us who forget history are doomed to repeat it. And
I'd like to respond.
And the absolute giving in to dictators, which is being suggested on this stage, just shows the immaturity of the approach.
Governor Christie, thank you. Governor DeSantis, I'd like you to weigh in on this idea. Are you concerned that this could become a wider war if Putin is not stopped now?
Well, any suggestion by Zelensky or anyone else that we're going to eventually have U.S. troops there, I can tell the American people when I'm president that will not happen. We are not going to send your sons and daughters to Ukraine. I am going to send troops to our southern border. If you look at the threats that we face, terrorists have come in through our southern border. I'm going to shut it down. I'm going to have the military, and I'm going to deport the people who've come, particularly under Biden, who've come from the Middle East, come from all these places. Now, Biden wants $105 billion.
So deport people who've done nothing wrong? You want to deport people who are here on student visas just because they go to a protest. You want to shut down Students for Justice in Palestine. And now you want to deport people who came from the Middle East just because they came from the Middle East. Leaning heavily into the Trump shit.
60, most of that's Ukraine, including some of it going to pay pensions for bureaucrats and salaries. That is a totally ridiculous use of American tax dollars. He says he has money for border to try to do, and the media repeat that. When you look at it, what most of the money is money to process more illegal aliens into this country. How is that solving the problem? That's making the problem worse. And what does he do for the Indo-Pacific? A pittance. That is the top threat that we face. We need to bring this war to an end. We need the Europeans to step up and do their fair share. And we need to get serious about the top threat that this country faces, which is the Chinese Communist Party.
So if I may
Thank you,
respond
Governor.
to the Ukraine.
Bro, the Chinese Communist Party is basically the Republican Party of the PRC. They're no threat to this country.
Question.
In fact, we are going to go from the hot wars in Ukraine and Gaza and Israel to what many people are calling the new Cold War with China. And I remind the audience that it's important for our visitors at home to
This guy is so deep in the closet, he's finding brass dildos.
be able to hear you, and especially for the people in Beijing to hear you. Many Republicans believe that the Chinese Communist Party and General Secretary Xi is an existential threat to the United States. The flashpoint is
they aren't.
Taiwan. For decades and decades, the American military, but primarily the United States Navy, has deterred an attack from China to the island state of Taiwan. But Ronald Reagan's Navy of 600 ships is gone. Now, the question to you is, and I'll start with you, Ambassador Haley, because you were in President Trump's cabinet. His goal was a 355-ship Navy. That's what he pushed for. He got to 300. It's now at 291. Is that big enough to deter and, if necessary, defeat an invasion of Taiwan?
China has the largest naval fleet in the world. They have 350 ships. They'll have 400 ships in 2 years. We won't even have 350 ships in 2 decades. China has built up their military. It's not just land, air, and sea. They're doing cyber. They're doing artificial intelligence. They're doing space.
So they're basically doing everything that we're doing. Like, do you really expect them to just lag behind? Because America, ever since they liberated themselves from the KMT, which was a party backed by the American imperialists, America has been fucking with them and seeing them as an existential threat. So, of course, they're going to ensure that they have a strong, modern military to counter American threats. Like, it's their right. They are a state, just like the United States is a state. Like, what exactly do you expect? Them to just be like, okay, we can't have too strong of a military because we don't want to piss the Americans off. Like, bruh.
America needs to modernize our military. We need to do everything we can. The first thing is you go and you make sure you have the backs of Ukraine. That's why the Taiwanese want.
How does ensuring that we have Ukraine's back modernize our military?
Us to support Ukraine because they know that sends the biggest message to China. The second thing is we go to China and we start being tough on them. No more sales of our American.
This lady really doesn't know anything about the Chinese or their people or how they do business.
Soil to China, and let's take back what they've already stolen. Then you go and to the universities. No more having millions of dollars go to our universities. Then we will go and end all formal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans from fentanyl, something Ron has yet to say that.
You are going to turn us into a third world country before you start World War III.
He's going to do. And then we modernize our military. When we strengthen our military, when we modernize it with the focus of cyber, artificial intelligence, and space, when we make sure that we have the backs of our friends, whether it's in Israel, whether it's in Ukraine, and we should be arming Taiwan. Make sure they have the equipment they need. Make sure they have the training they need now. There is nothing China fears more than knowing that America will have Taiwan's back. Let's make sure that we show it by making sure they have the equipment they need.
Governor DeSantis, my question is specifically about the Navy. It's at 291. It's going to go down perhaps as low as 280. Is it enough? And what would you build if you were going to build more?
Not enough. We have to have the ability to back up a strategy of denial of President Xi's ambitions. And if China is able to be the world's leading superpower, that will affect you and your family in ways that are going to be very bad. They will export authoritarianism all around the world as the cost of doing business. They will impose things.
No, they won't. The Chinese don't give a shit about anything but money. They don't care what political system you have. That's why they do business with fucking Israel.
Things like social credit scores and internet monitoring. So this is, to this generation, what the Soviet Union was to the post-World War II generation. I've already released a plan. We're going to get to 355 ships at the end of the first term, 385 ships at the end of the second term, but we're going to have a path to 600 ships over the next 20 years. I think the future of freedom is going to be determined in the Indo-Pacific. We have a strategy not just military, but decoupling from the economy and fighting them here at home with their cultural. You know, Ambassador Haley said somehow I wasn't doing. She welcomed them into South Carolina, gave them land near a military base, wrote the Chinese ambassador a love letter saying what a great friend they were. That was like their number.
Wow, that's kind of what governors do.
Number one way to do economic development. In Florida, I banned China from buying land in this state, and we kicked out on our universities, and we kicked the Confucius Institutes out of our universities.
So this is basically just xenophobic saber rattling. Who can hate Chinese people the most?
We've recognized the threat, and we've acted swiftly and decisively.
Senator Scott, you've been in the Congress since 2011. Defense spending has fallen over that entire period of time. Where are we going to get the money, and what would you build, and what kind of ships to deter China from attacking Taiwan?
Well, two major problems with the question. Number one, we do not have currently a defense industrial bank to allow us to have the kind of production that we need in order to keep America safe. Frankly, if we are not prepared to fight and engage in 3 continents at the same time, think about where we are today. In the Middle East, we are in the midst of trying to back our strongest ally. In Eastern Europe.
You all know Israel spies on us, right? Like, our strongest ally in the Middle East spies on us. Like, Mossad and the CIA, like, they have really, really bad relations. Like, I think agents from one agency have killed agents from the other agency. Like, Israeli and United States intelligence do not get along all that well. They've stolen shit from us. We've stolen shit from them. That's how they got a nuclear program.
Seeing our resources and our weaponry help degrade the Russian military. The Indo-Pacific, we have real challenges. The long-term threat.
How many times is this motherfucker going to say degrade the Russian military?
The long-term threat is China. Immediate threat is our southern border. In order for us to have the military to fight 3 different continents at the exact same time, we are going to have to invest heavily in our military, but we're also going to have to invest heavily in an industrial base so that we can hit our objectives from a military perspective, not only with our ships, but also with our planes. We are so old as a military that in order for us to recalibrate, we're going to have to invest. One of the things I do in my Made in America strategy is we create more than 4 million new jobs by having high-tech manufacturing come back to America, decoupling from China, so that we focus our attention on creating that industrial revolution that will be necessary for us.
420 times Weed Bong says, Israel literally torpedoed and sunk the naval ship that my grandfather was on, the USS Liberty. May he rest in peace.
To achieve the goal of having a military that is ready to be lethal and come home safe.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Ramaswamy, I'm looking for specifics. What would you build? Where would you build it? When would they be in the water? How big would the fleet get?
First answer is end the toxic divest to invest program. For people who don't know about that, we're decommissioning ships in the South China Sea. The foundation of war is economics. Rebuild our defense industrial base at home. But here's the dirty little secret. Our actual defense industrial base depends on China for the supply chain, for the F-35 jets, for the ships that we're building.
Vivek is the smartest guy on this stage. That says a lot.
Think about this. Why are we stockpiling that if it isn't to actually be strong against our enemy, China? We depend on them for that, just like we depend on them for pharmaceuticals, just like we depend on them for semiconductors. So here's why we can't get tough with China. It's because we depend on them for our modern way of life, and we have to declare economic independence from our enemy. That's the Declaration of Independence that Thomas Jefferson, at the age of 33, would have signed. And today, if he were alive, that's the Declaration of Independence that I will sign as the next president. I do have to recognize that Ron DeSantis was correct about acknowledging Nikki Haley's tough talk when she was ambassador to the UN, calling China our great friend, bringing the CCP to South Carolina. What he left out, though, Ron, and be honest about it, there was a lobbying-based exemption in that bill that allowed Chinese nationals to buy land within a 20-mile radius of a military base lobbied for by one of your donors. So I think we have to call a spade a spade. We need politicians who are independent of the forces that increase our...
Okay, this Vivek is eating them up tonight. Like, this is the smartest guy on the stage, and that says a lot.
Our dependence on China. My message to Xi Jinping is this. You are done buying land in this country. You will not donate to universities in this country. U.S. businesses won't expand into the Chinese market until you play by the same set of rules.
Ramaswamy,
you're kicked out of the WTO, and you actually have to have accountability for the COVID-19 pandemic financially, which unleashed hell on the world. We have
oh, my God.
to hold them accountable.
Do you have a number and a plan?
I think that we need to increase our naval capacity by at least 20% over the course of the next several years. I think we have to, at minimum, be able to meet our AUKUS agreement standards. Right now, we are at risk of not even being able to meet our AUKUS standards with Australia and the UK. So what we need to do is have a plan that reverses the trajectory of the divest to invest program
Hugh, I'd like to
by
respond.
20% over the next 3 years.
Governor Christie?
You know, my first observation, Hugh, is that nobody answers your question. And my second observation is these three in the middle think they're the enemy. I know China is the enemy, and that's what we should be focused on. So let's be really clear. The nuclear submarines in this United States Navy is the greatest deterrent to Chinese aggression, and that is the first place I would go to increase American naval power. Our nuclear submarines are able to move stealthily, quietly, and effectively. And if we are going to deter China from invading Taiwan, the only way we're going to do it is to make sure that they don't know whether how many nuclear submarines from the United States of America are in the South China Sea and in that area and ready to strike.
So keep in mind, there's no Chinese ships in the Gulf of Mexico, but we've got ships all the way over in the South China Sea.
On them if they decide to move on Taiwan. And so we, as our first priority, need to go directly to our nuclear sub program, Hugh, and we need to increase it drastically. That would be priority number one. Ships would come next, but to me, the ships are secondary choice here. The submarines are the single most important thing that we could be deterring, that we could be using to deter China. But the other thing we could do to deter China is to let them know that the blood money they're spending for Russia in Ukraine right now will not be effective, that we send Putin home with his tail between his legs and make them understand that the same fate waits for them If they decide to move towards Taiwan with a more aggressive nuclear sub-program, we'll be able to make that threat real.
Thank you, Governor. We're going to take a brief pause now, and we'll be back to the Republican presidential primary debate. Please stay tuned.
I guess that's my signal. It's time to go smoke. I'll be back.
And welcome back to tonight's NBC News Republican presidential debate. Once again, here's Hugh Hewitt.
Thank you, Lester. We're going to stay on China, and we're going to talk specifically about TikTok. Last week, Congressman Mike Gallagher, who is chairman of the House Bipartisan Select Committee on the Chinese Communist Party, published a long essay on TikTok following the flooding of pro-Hamas propaganda onto TikTok accounts across the United States. Chairman Gallagher called it shocking. He called the app predatory, controlled by America's preeminent adversary, one used to push propaganda and divide America. It's spyware, he said, a means of surveillance. Governor Christie, do you agree with Chairman Gallagher? And if so, would you ban or force the sale of TikTok?
I agree 100% with Chairman Gallagher, and let me say this. TikTok is not only spyware, it is polluting the minds of American young people all throughout this country, and they're doing it intentionally. And when you saw what happened in the last few weeks with all of this anti-Semitic, horrible stuff that their algorithms were pushing out at a gargantuan rate, this is China trying to further divide the United States of America. And this is one of the big failings among many of the Trump administration. He talked tough about TikTok. I heard him do it many times. But when it came down to it, he did not ban them when he could have and should have. And now since then, we've had an additional nearly 6 years of this type of poison being put out throughout the United States, even putting aside the spying, which we know is going on, and the theft of American personal data and information. So in my first week as president, we would ban TikTok. They want to go ahead and sell it? Let them go ahead and sell it. But I'll tell you another reason we would do it. Facebook's not in China. X is not in China. They're not permitting a free flow of information to the Chinese people from our social media companies, yet we just open the door and let them do what they're doing. TikTok should be banned because they are poisoning American minds, and I would do it week one.
Thank you, Governor.
So I come back to this dude raving about banning TikTok. That's very democratic.
Governor, I want to go to Governor DeSantis. Would you ban or force the sale of TikTok, regardless of whether or not China allowed American apps to operate in China?
Yes, I think that China is the top threat we face. They've been very effective at infiltrating different parts of our society. So my policy...
And yes, Facebook sucks. I have a lot to say about Elon Musk's Twitter, but I can actually say white people there without getting banned like I would on Facebook. Zuckerberg is Stalin.
on China and the Chinese Communist Party is very simple. We win, they lose. And in order to do...
I think it might be the other way around, my friend. Like, America's a dying empire, China is a rising one. And they've been at this longer than we have.
Do that, it's not just military, it's economic, and it's cultural. And as the dad of a 6'5" and a 3-year-old, I'm concerned about the data that they're getting from our...
He's a dad of a 6'5", 3-year-old? Jesus. Italian super soldiers.
Young people and what they're doing to pollute the minds of our young people. These kids get these devices and they have a mind of their own. And I know a lot of...
Shut up, boomer.
Parents are looking, it's hard to even keep it out. China's obviously the most extreme, but this is happening with other things. So we are going to do that, and we are going to make...
They don't like TikTok, and they didn't like Twitter during the big Black Lives Matter era because, like, it's a way to get information without going through their bourgeois media outlets. That's why they hate TikTok. They want information and mind control. It's really that simple.
Make sure to protect...
If they can't control it, they want to ban it.
The American people. It's a full spectrum approach to be able to fend China off. Yes, military deterrence. Yes, economic decoupling, but also their role in our culture. If we ignore that, we're not going to be able to win the fight.
Thank you, Governor. Ambassador Haley, speak to the parents out there. There are probably TikTok apps on half the phones in this auditorium.
No, I'm going to speak to the fact that 2 people hit me and you didn't let me respond. So let's first talk about the fact that...
Wait, they up here fighting?
They want to talk about the Chinese land from 10 years ago. Yes, I brought a fiberglass company 10 years ago to South Carolina. But Ron, you are the chair of your economic development agency that as of last week said Florida is the ideal place for Chinese businesses. Not only that, you have
Look at Ron just standing there. He looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
a company that is manufacturer of
He looks like a skinny Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Chinese military planes. You have it. They are expanding 2 training sites at 2 of your airports now. One which is...
Have you ever had a century of humiliation? Do you want a century of humiliation? Because that's how you get a century of humiliation.
12 miles away from a naval base. Then you have another company that's expanding, and they were just invaded by the Department of Homeland Security. So mine was 10 years ago.
You gave
Yours
them
was
stuff.
6
I
months
didn't
ago.
give them anything.
What's your story?
And I abolished that agency that she's talking about.
No,
Enterprise Florida, we abolished it. And of course, we banned China from buying
the
land.
website.
This guy really likes banning things.
Not exactly a great recruiting pitch if you're banning them from purchasing land at all. So we've stood up and we've done the right thing in Florida.
Mr. Ramaswamy, we've talked about this. You campaign on TikTok. How do you get TikTok banned if you use it?
Well, I want to laugh at why Nikki Haley didn't answer your question, which was about looking at families in the eye. In the last debate, she made fun of me for actually joining TikTok while her own daughter was actually using the app for a long time. So you might want to take care of your family first.
Leave my
before
daughter
preaching
out
to
of your
anybody else,
voice.
your adult daughter.
What the fuck? Leave my daughter out of your voice. That is the most incoherent sentence I've ever heard.
The next generation of Americans.
I think she was trying to say, keep my daughter's name out your mouth, but her not being black, she doesn't know how to say it.
Americans are using it, and that's actually the point. You have her supporters propping her up. That's fine. Here's the truth.
You're just
the easy
scum.
answer is actually to say that we're just going to ban one app.
That's the meme. That's the meme. You're just scum.
We got to go further. We have to ban any U.S. company actually
Desi's going crazy up here tonight.
transferring U.S. data to the Chinese. Here's a story most people don't know. Airbnb hands over U.S. user data to the CCP. Now, that's a U.S.-owned company. So this is the problem when you have Republicans that temporarily go the way the winds blow, and now it's popular to talk tough on China. When she was UN ambassador, called them literally, her words, not mine, our great friend. You can't be fair weather fans of the right policy. Get to the root cause. Even U.S. companies in Silicon Valley are regularly doing it. Cut the virtue signaling. The fact of the matter is Democrats are on TikTok today. The only person, one of the few people who is putting up content the way the actual algorithms work, speaking for pro-Israel views or others, is
Ambassador
me. And I predict
Haley,
more Republicans will join it. But stop U.S. companies from turning over data to Chinese companies. That's the real
Moderators
answer, not the
like
virtue
Kristen
signaling.
don't get to respond to personal attacks, but you do.
Thank you very much. You know, when he talks about me praising China, he doesn't know the fact that the reason China was praised was because I negotiated with China and Russia the largest set of sanctions against North Korea in a generation. That is literally the reason North Korea stopped testing ballistic missiles. So I said China did good on their part. That was a negotiation you could never do.
You said, Nikki. Those are your words, not mine. And so just own up to it.
You would never
you can
have been
change
able
your
to
mind.
get
That's
that
allowed.
negotiation
But don't
done.
lie to the people about what you've said or what you've done in South Carolina.
My
You have brought
entire
them to South
career
Carolina.
at the
Ron is
United
right about
Nations.
that.
Every day I fought China, and I did it by making sure
hard
no
facts.
one
You
could
brought them
get
to this
any
country.
agency heads in UN. I did it by making sure that we called them out on human rights. I did it by making sure that we held them accountable on everything that they did. That's the reason we got out of the Human Rights Council. That's the reason we called them out. And there's not been a day I haven't
Nikki,
stopped.
Senator
Scott, it is your turn.
Policy
Mr.
experience with the millions you
Ramaswamy.
made afterwards.
Everybody else is hanging on to the rules here, Mr. Ramaswamy. Senator Scott.
Thank you. We should.
Yeah, Vivek is leaning really heavy into this knockoff Trump thing.
I appreciate y'all clapping for me already. This is wonderful answer. Love this. Without any question. What we should do is ban TikTok, period. Now, we saw under former President Trump, he tried to ban TikTok twice, but was struck down by our federal courts. If you cannot ban TikTok, you should eliminate the Chinese presence on the app, period. We also should provide, in my...
How are you going to kick 1 billion and change people off an app? Like, are these people thinking about the things that they're saying? How are you going to kick the largest group of people? I think India overtook them, but the second largest group of people off the internet.
Parents' Bill of Rights, we give parents the opportunity to give their kids permission under 14 to be on those apps. I think it's incredibly important for us as Americans to take back control of the information, especially of our kids. Where does it go? We should know that. One of the ways that we get to know that is by having a parental consent. But if we can eliminate TikTok, that is a first step. But it's not just TikTok. China continues to spy on our kids, but they're also buying our farmlands. We talked about that several times there. We have to make sure that we use the tools that are in our toolkit to stop China from buying farmland near our bases. The third thing we have to do is make sure that they stop stealing our intellectual property. They're literally stealing our IP to compete against us. My administration, we stopped that day one, and we start making sure that we create six-figure income for jobs made in America through my strategy.
Kristen.
Hugh, thank you so
Well, that was some very spicy word salad.
much. We're now going to talk about Venezuela, where
Yummy, yummy. Word salad.
millions have fled political and economic turmoil. Many Venezuelan immigrants are settling right here in Florida.
Oh no, Vuvuzela now.
President Trump and President Biden have taken different approaches to Nicolas Maduro's regime with little result. Former President Trump put economic pressure on Venezuela and backed one of Maduro's rivals. President Biden temporarily eased sanctions to encourage electoral reforms. Governor DeSantis, do you see the political situation in Venezuela as a threat to the United States, and what would your approach be?
We should never rely on Venezuela for oil like Biden has had to go beg. I'm going to unleash all of America's energy potential. On day one, I'm taking all the Biden regulations, the Green New Deal, ripping it up and throwing it in the trash can where
Biden doesn't even support the Green New Deal. What the fuck are you talking about?
it belongs. We're going to lower your gas prices. We're going to create jobs. We're going to lower energy costs, but we're also going to be more energy independent and secure. We'll choose Midland over Moscow. We'll choose the Marcellus over the mullahs, and we'll choose Bakken over Beijing. That is good for America's national security. Biden's Green New Deal, that's good for Venezuela, it's good for Russia, it's good for Iran, and it's good for China. So I would turn the screws on the Venezuelan regime. I think it's a corrupt, dictatorial regime, and we should never
kind of like Florida
go hat in hand begging for oil from them.
Just to be clear, would you reimpose the sanctions?
Yes, absolutely.
Ambassador Haley, what would your approach be?
You know, I stood on the Simon Bolivar Bridge and watched thousands of Venezuelans cross for hours in the hot sun holding their babies to get the one meal they might get that day going from Venezuela to Colombia. They were fleeing socialism and begging for freedom. We need to make sure that we do everything we can to sanction Maduro. We shouldn't be getting dirty oil, and Biden just gave 500,000 Venezuelans temporary priority status, which is just going to have more of them come. But on the energy side, it cracks me up that Ron continues to do this. He has opposed fracking. He's opposed drilling. Last time he said it wasn't true, and everybody found out that it was true. He opposed it before Florida voters even voted on it. He was praised by the Sierra Club, and you're trying to make up for it and act like you weren't a liberal when it comes to the environment. You were. You always have been. Just own it if that's the case, but don't keep saying you're something that you're not.
Let me respond to that. Our whole energy plan, you can't get the shale without fracking. We are absolutely going to frack, but I disagree with Nikki Haley.
Go frack yourself.
I don't think it's a good idea to drill in the Florida Everglades, and I know most Floridians agree with me.
You banned fracking.
Thank you very much. Lester?
All right, thank you. Let's turn to one of the biggest issues for voters. That, of course, is the economy. This is a question that will go to all of you. An Iowa voter recently told NBC News, "How am I going to make sure my pantry's stocked without breaking the bank?" You've all said the best way to deal with rising prices is to cut government spending. But that would take time.
Bruh. The fastest way to cut rising prices is to institute price controls. But these people have the minds of fucking jars of Play-Doh, so they're not going to do that.
To play out, and Americans are struggling right now. Senator Scott, I'll start with you. What would you do the moment you take office to help Americans manage the cost of living? So we're talking about short term here.
My mother was a single mother who raised me and my brother in a very challenging economic situation. The first thing I can tell you is that when your gas prices are 40% higher right now than they were just a little over 2 years ago, that's not a problem for my mama. That was a crisis. The first thing I would do as President of the United States is I would sign the XL Keystone Pipeline and start seeing resources flow. Second thing I would do is make sure that there's certainty and predictability so that those folks who have the leases in our country would have the certainty and predictability to go ahead and become energy independent. We should focus not just on being
And so who could just ride oil company dick harder?
energy independent. We should focus on being energy dominant. America is the home to more energy resources than any other country on the planet. We can reduce the price of energy, we can reduce the price of food and the price of electricity if we focus on my build here, don't borrow from China plan that is embedded. The Made in America strategy creates 10 million new jobs in 3 different areas. One is innovation. Second is the high-tech manufacturing. And the third...
This guy is boring. I could tell he wasn't raised in the black church because, like, black preachers are, like, inspiring. They could sell shit to a fucking dog. Okay? They could sell shit to a shitty dog. This guy, he has all of the charisma of a fucking seashell. Like, he's just a pain in the ass to listen to.
Is the energy economy. We have an opportunity as Americans to actually export the surplus energy that we create in our nation and disconnect from China and from murderous dictators and tyrants around the world.
Your time is up, but let me just follow up. The idea of pumping gas, of turning on pipelines, that doesn't make gas cheaper that day. I'm talking about you become president. What can you do specifically to help people feel better about their situation or be better with their situation?
Well, actually, it does, to be honest with you. The way that the economy works is it works on the ability to anticipate excess supply versus the demand. When that happens, confidence drives our prices down because we know there's going to be a greater surplus. When you allow for those who have leases to actually start drilling, to start using those leases for more energy excavation, you put our economy in the strongest position. And as a result of that, prices start going down. That is the kind of economy that, as President of the United States, I would lead this nation to making sure that we first use the resources in our own country and not going outside of our country in order to achieve our objective. You know, Proverbs 22:7 reminds us that the borrower is slave to the lender. We have become an indentured servant too often to countries like China. By having an energy economy, we start allowing this nation to once again return.
Senator, thank you. Let me ask the same question to Governor DeSantis. Can you give us some, you ticked off a number of things a moment ago, but some specific examples of ways that would put people on a better economic footing right away?
So I started off working minimum wage jobs. I did $6 an hour as an electrician's assistant. I worked all kinds of things to be able to get through school. And I did that because I believed in America, if you work hard and get the most out of your God-given ability, you can get ahead. And what's happening now, many of you are working hard and you're falling further and further behind. I've met people in Iowa, New Hampshire, and all across the country who've talked about...
They're just telling people what they want to hear. They don't have any intention of doing any of this stuff.
All the burdens that they're facing with the rising prices. And I've heard from multiple people the same story. When they go grocery shopping, what they now do is they figure out what they have to take out of the cart once it's ringing up, because it rings up so much faster and so much higher at the cash register that they can't afford the full cart of groceries anymore.
I love how these Republicans are actually acting like they care about what working class people go through.
We have to restore the American dream in this country. What can you do on day one? Here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to take all the...
Like each one of these people has a net worth higher than the average American would get working for several lifetimes. They don't care.
The executive orders, the regulations, everything involving Bidenomics, I'm going to rip it up and I'm going to throw it in the trash can on day one where it belongs. That is going to give the economy breathing room. And I'm also going to rein in the Federal Reserve. They have helped create, with their reckless monetary policy, what we have faced since the COVID-19 pandemic. They botched it. Congress botched it. Both parties are to blame. Fed should focus on stable prices. They are not an economic central planner for the American people.
Governor, thank you. Mr. Ramaswamy, weigh in on this. Ways that you can improve people's financial condition in the short term.
Right, and as a CEO, the economic question is core to my vision and policy prescription for this country. Increase the supply of everything. It's the law of supplies and demand. Increase the supply of energy. That brings down the cost of energy, grows the economy. Drill, frack, burn coal, embrace nuclear. Increase the supply of labor in this country. Stop using our taxpayer money to pay people more to stay at home instead of to go to work. Increase the supply of housing. People don't talk about this one in the Republican Party. The land use restrictions are constricting the supply of housing. That's making housing more expensive for ordinary Americans across this country. So that's the true answer. And I think it takes a CEO in the White House who actually understands this to get this done.
We just had a CEO in the White House.
Because Americans at home, they know the Bidenomics is a lie. Prices are going up. Interest rates and mortgages to buy your home are going up. But wages have remained flat. That's the hard diagnosis for our economy. And this is about more than just our economy. I say this as a member of my generation. I'm 38 years old. I'm the youngest person ever to run for U.S. president as a Republican. The reason my generation has lost our sense of national pride, in part, is because...
The reason that... What do you mean? Like, oh, he's an older millennial? Like, the reason that... So he's technically the same generation as me, except I'm a younger millennial. The reason that millennials and Zoomers have lost our sense of national pride is because we were actually educated. We were actually educated about the horrible, fucked up shit that this country has done and is doing, and we don't want any part of it.
People in my generation feel like the American dream isn't available to them. And part of
the American dream was a lie in the first place.
The reason why is we burdened them with four-year college degrees that did not serve their head start on the American dream. People will be more proud of a country if we're all making more money in that country. This is how we revive national pride and our identity, and it will take a CEO in the White House with zero-based budgeting, by the way, to take on the federal debt to get this job done.
Let me turn to Governor Christie on that.
Well, look, Lester, part of the entire premise of the question, and I agree with Tim on this, is absolutely energy is the key to this because it drives every one of those other prices. You know, now food gets to your grocery store, it gets trucked. And those truckers have to pay for fuel and for the higher fuel prices. And when you go ahead and you tell people, we are going to unleash every bit of American energy, every bit of its potential, what happens in the futures markets? The prices go down because those people who are believing that the Biden program will continue are the ones who are bidding this up. And let me tell you the other place that's bidding it up, in the Middle East. And so if you don't believe that making sure that...
Vivek is only running so he can find the top secret documents on reversing male pattern baldness. I mean, I would support that.
Israel and that Israel situation that's going on right now isn't resolved and resolved quickly as President of the United States and bring stability back, that will also not permit countries like Saudi Arabia and others to be able to jack their prices as well in what they say is in response to a crisis, when it's really what it's in response to is putting more money in their pockets. When they have an American president who knows that Israel must be defended not with humanitarian pauses and not with suggestions for ceasefire.
No, he's leaned towards the hawk stage. Like, we're talking about the American economy. What the fuck does Israel have to do with it?
But with letting them know we will supply them with everything they need, that will also bring stability to the market. Energy is the key to bring...
No, it won't, because Israel produces and thrives on chaos. That's not going to provide stability to anything.
Bringing this down, it's what every American family needs when they turn on their lights, fill up their car, and go to the grocery store. And we need to do that first and foremost. That's the short-term answer.
Governor Christie, thank you. Ambassador Haley, let me come at this from a slightly different direction. Americans in rural communities are being especially squeezed by inflation right now. An Iowa State University study found that last year inflation cost rural households about an extra $5,000. How would you specifically help rural Americans who are suffering right now, Ambassador?
Well, I'm a product of rural America. I grew up in rural South Carolina, and I can tell you what we're seeing now in America is the rich are getting richer and the poor are getting poorer. We have to go and start beefing up the middle class, and the first thing I would do is I will eliminate the federal gas and diesel tax in this country. We'll cut taxes on the middle class, but we have to stop this.
Yeah, let's just fucking increase our deficit even more. Good deal.
Spending binge that's happening by Republicans and Democrats in Congress.
So you want to continue to hand out fucking weapons and money to Israel and every other tin-pot dictatorship around the world. But you also want to cut taxes. That is going to balloon our deficit even more than it already is. Never mind the clusterfuck that you're about to get into with, like, World War III is going to be expensive. You want World War III, but you want to inhibit your ability to pay for World War. Well, I guess it won't matter because after World War III, we'll all be fucking dead. But Jesus.
I will make sure, one, we claw back the $500 billion of unspent COVID dollars that are out there. Instead of 87,000 IRS agents going after middle America, we'll go after the hundreds of billions of dollars of COVID fraud that exist, one out of every $7. We'll stop the spending, we'll stop the borrowing, we'll eliminate the earmarks, and I'll veto any spending bill that doesn't go back to pre-COVID levels. That will cut trillions and allow us to be safe. We also need to be not energy independent, energy dominant. We are blessed with resources. Let's do it. But the reason no one should give you a number, Hugh, on the amount of ships in the Navy is because in a few years, our interest expense is going to be more than our defense budget. So no one can give you that number realistically without first tackling what's happening with the financial situation. It would be a false number to give you that. We have got to understand this is a crisis. It is a national security concern. If we don't deal with what's going to happen with that interest expense in a few years, we're going to look like Japan, and we can't let that happen. The strong dollar matters.
I think there's quite a few 17 and 18-year-olds who would absolutely love for us to look like Japan.
Ambassador, thank you very much. Christian.
Americans could see their Social Security benefits drastically cut in the next decade because the program is running out of money. Former President Trump has said, quote,
It's been running out of money since I was a fucking kid.
under no circumstances should Republicans cut entitlements. Governor Christie, first to you. You have proposed raising the retirement age for younger Americans. What would that age be specifically, and would you consider making any other reforms to Social Security?
Sure, and we have to deal with this problem. Now, look, if we raise the retirement age a few years for folks that are in their 30s and 40s, I have a son who's in the audience tonight who's 30 years old. If he can't adjust to a few-year increase in Social Security retirement age over the next 40 years, I got bigger problems with him than his Social Security payments. And the fact is, we need to be realistic about this. There are only three things that go into determining whether Social Security can be solvent or not: retirement age, eligibility for the program in general, and taxes. That's it. We are already overtaxed in this country, and we should not raise those taxes. But on eligibility also, I don't know if out there tonight, and if you're watching Warren, I don't know if Warren Buffett is collecting Social Security, but if he is, shame on you. You should.
Yeah, shame on you. Shame on you too for wanting to raise the retirement age.
Shouldn't be taking.
Like, why would you do that? Look at you. I guess it's irrelevant to you because you're gonna keel over long before retirement age. Just looking at you, but like, bruh, just shameless. And look at DeSantis over here looking like he's just been cucked. Like, look at him, just looking down.
Taking the money. There are a lot of programs in
That DeSantis is pissed.
this country that we all pay for, that we don't get a direct benefit from. Food stamps is one of them. I've never, fortunately in my life, ever had me or my family on food stamps, but I'm glad it's there, so that no one in this country goes to bed hungry at night if they have availability to that program. But I don't get a direct benefit. The fact is, on Social Security, remember why it was established. It was established as a safety net program to make sure that no one would grow old in this country in poverty. That's what we got to get back to. Rich people should not be collecting Social Security.
Governor, can you give me a specific age, 69, 70? What would the age be?
No, look, that's going to be a part of a negotiation with Congress, Kirsten, and hell, I'm not going to start negotiating until I get there.
All right, Ambassador Haley, let me have you weigh in on this because
Okay, that was a pretty decent dodge and a save.
you said in June that you would be open to raising the retirement age. Have you determined what that age would be specifically, and what other reforms are you looking at?
So first of all, any candidate that tells you that they're not going to take on entitlements is not being serious. Social Security will go bankrupt in 10 years. Medicare will go bankrupt in 8. Right now, you have Ron and Trump joining Biden and Pelosi saying they're not going to change or do any sort of entitlement reform. What we need to do is keep our promises. Those that have been promised should keep it. But for like my kids in their 20s, you go and you say, we're going to change the rules. You change the retirement age for them. Instead of cost of living increases, we should go to increases based on inflation. We should limit benefits on the wealthy. Bernie Marcus can tell you he hates getting that check. Limit the benefits on the wealthy, and then expand Medicare Advantage plans. Seniors love that, and let's make sure we do that so that they can have more competition. That's how we'll deal with entitlement reform, and that's how we'll start to pay down this debt.
And can you give me a specific age? Have you
Nobody's talking about slashing the defense budget.
determined the age?
Again, you have to work with Chris. What I can tell.
So we're going to keep paying for Israel to have universal health care. We're going to keep paying for Ukraine's fuckery, but we're just going to fuck over my generation. Okay, good deal.
You is it's going to be those in their 20s just coming into the system, and it should reflect more of life expectancy. It doesn't do that now.
All right, Mr. Ramaswamy, have you determined if you would touch entitlements and Social Security? What, if any, reforms are you looking at?
So this is really important right now. We're working within the last window I believe we will have to actually fix this problem while still leaving Social Security and Medicare benefits for current seniors intact. I'll tell you how. The other candidates assume, like Nikki, that it can't be done. And on her math, she's right about it. But her math assumes $7 trillion of our $33 trillion national debt going to fight wars like in places like Iraq and Afghanistan. Minus that, our national debt would be $26 trillion right now. Then you go to zero-based budgeting, which I've proposed as a CEO. It's how I've run businesses. It's how many CEOs run businesses. Don't use last year's budget as the baseline. Start with zero as the baseline and then ask what's actually necessary. 75% headcount reduction. Yes, that is severe in the number of federal employees in the Washington, D.C. bureaucracy. Shut down redundant agencies that should not exist. Deliver economic growth as a positive tailwind. I think we can get to 3, 4, maybe even 5% GDP growth if we really take the regulatory shackles off of our economy. And against that backdrop, I believe this is our last best.
This guy's Reagan with a receding hairline.
Window to be able to take care of our national debt problem through those severe measures, including sacrificing the foreign wars that many bloodthirsty members of both parties have a hunger for. That's the one secret for how we're going to be able to do this, and that requires discipline. So we can't have the first conversation we were having, sending foreign aid willy-nilly to countries whose national debt per capita is less than ours.
Thank you,
but
Mr.
if we do this correctly, I think this is our last window, and it'll take a CEO from the next generation to do it.
Thank you very much. Senator Scott, weigh in here. What are you looking at to keep Social Security sustainable?
The bottom line is a simple one. We have to grow our economy and cut our spending. Let me just say to my mama and to every other mama or grandfather receiving Social Security, as President of the United States, I will protect your Social Security. The fact is that we're spending today about $1.1 trillion of Social Security, about $750 billion on Medicare, about $300 billion on Medicaid, about $400 billion on veterans benefits, $1.7 trillion on annual appropriations. If we're going to actually tame this tiger, the way you do it is not by picking on seniors who have paid into a program that deserve their money coming back out to them. The way you deal with it is, number one, you have to grow your economy. My plan, Made in America, creates 10 million new jobs, grows our economy at 5%. By doing so, you add trillions of dollars of economic activity and billions of dollars to your treasury. Number two, you have to cut taxes. When we cut taxes in 2017, I wrote the Tax Cuts and Jobs Act. Everybody said, well, guess what?
These people are still fucking relying on Reaganomics, even though it's been thoroughly discredited.
Revenue will go down. Well, in 2018, after we wrote it in 2017, what happened? Revenue went up by 3%, and the next year it went up by another 3%. So what we know is that the Laffer curve still works, that the lower the tax, the higher the revenue. And finally, if we're going to deal with it, we have to take our annual appropriations back to pre-2020, pre-COVID levels of spending, which would save us about $500 billion in the next budget window. By doing that, we deal with Social Security and our mandatory spending.
Thank you, Senator. Very quickly, would you raise the retirement age? Would you be open to raising the retirement age, or do you rule that out?
All you have to do is go to a farm in Iowa and watch the hard work and the dedication.
Yes or
you
no,
and I
though,
having
Senator?
a conversation.
Yes or
the
no?
The answer is no, but listen to this, though, before you go on. Thank you. The fact of the matter is that the more physical your labor, a year or 2 or 3 more is actually challenging to the physical body. You and I might have a different perspective, but for those farmers, they're working night and day.
Thank you, Senator. I appreciate it. Governor DeSantis, finally to you, would you be open to raising the retirement age, and how would you keep Social Security sustainable?
Well, look, as governor of Florida, I know a few people on Social Security, and I know it's important. My grandmother lived till 91, and Social Security was her sole source of income, and that's true for a lot of seniors throughout this country. So what I'd say to seniors in America, promise made, promise kept. I understand what you're going through with the rising prices, and you need that Social Security check. So we'll make sure to get that done. What can you do to help shore up Social Security? One of the things that's causing problems is the inflation.
Fucking with this dude, you ain't gonna get shit but $20 every month.
We have to reduce inflation. When you have higher inflation, the seniors get a cost of living adjustment, which means the program's spending more, but it doesn't cover the increase in the actual inflation rate. We also do need to get to at least 3% growth. You're never going to be able to have issues, be able to solve the budget without that. But I would note this. Congress for decades took money from Social Security. Social Security would have more tax revenue than it put out. They would take it and then they'd write an IOU to Social Security. Congress has a lot of dirty hands on this. I'm going to force Congress to stop spending so much money. And you know, one thing we have to do when we talk about the retirement age is just something that's changed in the last 4 or 5 years. Life expectancy in the United States is declining.
So, Governor,
in this
yes
country.
or no? Would you raise it? Would you raise the retirement age?
When life expectancy is declining, I don't see how you could raise it the other direction. So it's one thing to peg it on life expectancy, but we have had a significant decline in life expectancy in this country, and that's just a fact.
All right, Governor DeSantis, thank you. Thank you, candidates. And we will be right back after a quick break from Miami, Florida.
Smoke break.
Welcome back to tonight's NBC News Republican presidential debate. Once again, here's Salem Radio's Hugh Hewitt.
Thank you, Lester. When NBC News talks to voters, when I talk to voters every day, they all say that the border is a top issue. It can mean a lot of different things. It can mean 2 million.
No, we're definitely not going to hear anything fascist at all during this segment. They're all going to be reasonable and support more people coming to make America what it is. We're not going to hear anything horrible at all, or we're not going to hear anything untrue at all.
Million people who crossed illegally last year. It can mean more than 150 arrests of people on the terror watch list. It can mean the burden on states from having migrants move into their states from the southwestern border. But I want to talk about opioids specifically and fentanyl, and I'll start with you, Senator Scott. Tens of thousands of Americans' families have suffered a death to fentanyl. Young people sometimes die taking one pill. What can you do as Commander-in-Chief on the first day to stop fentanyl and the waterfall of it into this country?
Well, number one, we should close our southern border. For $10 billion, we could close our southern border. For an additional $5 billion, we could use the currently available military technology to surveil our southern border to stop fentanyl from crossing our border. I've already led on legislation that would sanction the Mexican cartels. If you remember the path, the precursors come from China, then they are manufactured in Mexican labs, and then the Mexican cartels bring them across our border. By sanctioning their accounts and eliminating their cash, we starve them of what they need. Number one, closing our southern border makes it nearly impossible to get in. The military-grade technology is a backup, making sure that we not only stop 70,000 deaths in the last 12 months because of fentanyl, it also allows us to deal with the human trafficking travesty that is entering in our country in the same path. If we are going to deal effectively with 100,000 overdose deaths in our country and the 70,000 that is directly linked to fentanyl, we have to deal with our ports of entry and deal with our southern border. If we do that effectively, we have started reducing the challenge from the outside, and then we have to deal with the challenge on the inside, which seems to be connected to a mental health crisis that is spreading throughout our nation.
Governor Christie, Senator Scott just mentioned ports of entry. 90% of the fentanyl that is seized in the United States is seized at ports of entry. We don't know what's coming in across the open southern border. You've been a United States attorney. You've taken on cartels. Can it really be done quickly? What would you do as president?
It can be done quickly in two ways, Hugh, on fentanyl. The first way is exactly as you suggest, at ports of entry. We have to beef up what our law enforcement has in terms of technology. I would invest in that as president. We need to make sure.
Yeah, more surveillance, yay. Let's just turn the hood into Gaza.
That law enforcement has every tool at its disposal to do it. Secondly, on day one, I would sign an executive order that would send the National Guard to partner with Customs and Border Patrol, both at ports of entry and at the open ports of our border.
Let's fill it up with soldiers.
Customs and Border Patrol agents are overwhelmed. There's 200,000 encounters a month over the last 11 months. We simply do not have the man and woman power at the border to be able to deal with it. And so dealing with both law enforcement, and you're right, we have done this, we can do this, but we got to give them the tools to do it, and technology is one of the biggest tools that we don't have enough of at the ports of entry. Now, we also need to lower demand, Hugh, in this country, and the way to lower demand is to start treating people again. You know, we started to do this before COVID, and we haven't done enough of it. And for every family out there tonight who has lost a loved one to fentanyl or to any other type of opioid overdose, what you know is all you want is a chance for them to win their lives back. When I'm president of the United States, we're going to call this what it is. It is a disease like heart disease, diabetes, or any other disease like cancer that can be treated, should be treated. We not only have to stop supply, but we have to lower demand and save lives.
Thank you, Governor. Governor DeSantis, you have talked about using United States Special Forces to attack the cartels where they manufacture the chemicals that come from China. How often?
That is a very stupid idea.
How many? What does that look like?
Chris Christie could end all immigration simply by lying down on the border.
Well, first, I was speaking to a dad who lost a son to fentanyl overdose. son wasn't a drug addict. He had taken some pill that happened to be laced with fentanyl, and it was a fatal overdose. And when he told me, obviously the pain of losing a child is as bad as it gets, but he said what was salt in the wounds is that these elites in D.C. don't give a damn about what's going on in this country.
Neither do you.
Don't care that we have tens of thousands of opioid deaths, that the fentanyl's pouring in. They are not taking the type of action we need to.
The only reason that y'all care about fentanyl or are acting like you care about fentanyl is because you see it as a cudgel to be used against China and to deepen and expand militarization on the U.S.-Mexico border. You all really don't care about how many addicts die every day. You all consider these people to be subhuman. You all consider them to be drags on society. Like, you all don't care. You all care about provoking more beef with China. That's it.
Declaring it a national emergency on day one. I'm sending U.S. military to the border. I'm going to stop the invasion cold. I am going to deport people who came illegally. And I'm even going to build the border wall and have Mexico pay for it like Donald Trump promised. How are you going to do it? Yeah, Mexico's not going to fork over money. We're going to impose fees on the remittances that foreign workers send to foreign countries. We'll raise billions of dollars. I'll build the wall. But we are going to...
Bruh. Really? Like, it's amazing how much Trump has fucked up the already fucked Republican Party. Like, each and every one of these people has used... This guy isn't even here. He thinks these debates are a joke. He knows he doesn't have to go to the debates because he's going to win. But, like, each and every one of them is using, barring outright stealing his talking points.
Designate the cartels to be foreign terrorist organizations or something similar to that. And we're going to authorize the use of deadly force. We're going to have maritime operations to interdict precursor chemicals going into Mexico. But I'll tell you this, if someone in the drug cartels is sneaking fentanyl across the border when I'm president, that's going to be the last thing they do. We're going to shoot them stone cold dead.
Ambassador Haley.
I want to be soft ass Dirty Harry.
Ambassador Haley, if the United States uses special forces in Mexico without prior notice to the Mexican allies to our south, what would your colleagues at the United Nations think about that?
I don't care what my colleagues at the United Nations think. What I'll tell you
Wow, what a diplomat you are, Miss Nikki.
is, first of all, you have to go to the source. We have lost more Americans than the Vietnam, Afghanistan, and Iraq wars combined. We lost 75,000 Americans last year. Go to the source. It is the reason why we'll continue to say we will end all normal trade relations with China until they stop murdering Americans. You watch how quick that flow stops. The second thing is we'll send special operations in to take out the cartels. We need to go to where they're distributing it, where the supply centers are, and take them out. We'll put 25,000 more Border Patrol and ICE agents on the ground and let them do their job. We will defund sanctuary cities. We will go back to the Remain in Mexico policy so that everybody stays in Mexico and they never get here in the first place. And instead of catch and deport, we'll go to catch and release. I'm sorry, instead of catch and release, we'll go to catch and deport. That is the way we'll deal with the border. Those are the things that we have to do going forward. But I do agree with Chris. One of the first things that we have to do is really focus on mental health and addiction centers. It is something that is needed in...
Yes, the velvet glove concealing the iron fist. You have this very hawkish policy, catch and deport. You got DeSantis' stupid ass saying that he's just going to basically empower death squads at the border. And then, oh yes, we also need addiction and treatment. Not a word about big pharmaceutical companies that manufacture these pills, though. Like, people are just dropping dead because of fentanyl. They're dropping dead because of oxys, roxys. Like, big pharma is making huge amounts of money about this, from this. But they don't care about that.
In our country terribly because we don't deal with mental health, and someone who doesn't get care for mental health falls into addiction, and we owe it to them to treat it like the cancer that it is.
Mr. Ramaswamy, special forces in Mexico, shoot them stone cold dead at the border?
One thing I just want to say, and how we're talking about this issue is, like Ron, I've actually met many parents across this country who have lost their kids to laced pharmaceuticals that have fentanyl in them. The only thing I would ask, Ron, I think you'd be on the same page with me on this. Let's not even call that an overdose.
Right.
That is not an overdose. That is poisoning. If you put that fentanyl in a Big Mac, we would not call that an overdose. You'd call it what it is. It's closer to bioterrorism. And I say that because as it uniquely relates to this crisis, that does warrant more aggressive means to deal with it. So there's a new presidential election in Mexico in 2024. People may not be aware of that. It's going to be someone other than Obrador, who has been a disaster in Mexico. I think he's even mentioned me.
I don't know. I think the Mexicans quite like Obrador. They just dislike him because he has vaguely pinkish, sock dib type policies.
Obliquely in speeches to say that somebody who would do this shouldn't get anywhere near the White House. Well, AMLO, get out of the way. There's going to be someone else in charge. I hope to build a good relationship with that next president of Mexico. We'll use our own military to seal our own southern border. What we need to do is stop using our military to protect somebody else's border halfway around the world when we're short right here at home. Get serious about protecting this border. And then the other thing that hasn't been discussed is the northern border. I'm the only candidate on the stage, as far as I'm aware, who has actually visited the northern border. There was enough fentanyl that was captured just on the northern border last year to kill 3 million Americans. So we got to just skate to where the puck is going, not just where the puck is. Don't just
He's mentioning Canada, and then he starts making hockey references.
build the wall, build both walls. Can't just complete the wall, use the military to seal the Swiss cheese for the tunnels that they're actually building underneath that wall.
Thank you,
That's
Mr.
what it needs to be
Ramaswamy.
practical and actually get this job done.
Thank you.
Hamas is coming to blow up our Whataburger.
Kristen.
Thank you, Hugh. Let's talk now about last night's election results. Abortion rights supporters saw victories in Ohio and Virginia following earlier wins in states like Kansas and Kentucky. Governor DeSantis, first to you, how do you see the path forward for Republicans on this issue?
Well, I stand for a culture of life, and I understand that it's important that everyone gets a shot. I'm reminded of a story about a young mother who was struggling in Jamaica about 45 years ago. She was counseled to not have a baby because she was poor, baby wouldn't have opportunity, and she came close to have an abortion, but she decided to have the baby, born poor in Jamaica. And the reason I know that story is because that baby girl ended up emigrating to the state of Florida, becoming a lawyer and a judge, and I appointed her to the Florida Supreme Court in August of 2022. We're better off when everybody counts. We're better off when
I have one black friend.
we can promote a culture of life. At the same time, I understand that some of these states are doing it a little bit different. Texas is not going to do it the same as New Hampshire. Iowa's not necessarily going to do it the same as Virginia. So you got to work from the bottom up. You got to do a better job on these referenda. I think of all the stuff that's happened to the pro-life cause, they have been caught flat-footed on these referenda, and they have been losing the referenda. A lot of the people who are voting for the referenda are Republicans who would vote for a Republican candidate. So you got to understand how to do that. But let's just be clear. The Democrats have taken a position. They will not identify the point at which there should be any protection all the way up until birth. That is wrong, and we cannot stand for that.
All right, Governor DeSantis, thank you. Ambassador
Maybe instead of just trying to litigate stupid shit like this, you just let people have abortions whenever they want them.
Haley, let me have you weigh in. Former President Trump has consistently blamed the abortion issue and how Republican candidates have talked about it for their electoral losses. How do you see the path forward?
You know, I've said it before. I think you have to be honest with the American people. This is a personal issue for every woman and every man. I am unapologetically pro-life, not because the Republican Party tells me to be, but because my husband Michael was adopted and I had trouble having both of my children. So I'm surrounded by blessings. Having said that, when you look post-Roe, a wrong was made right. They took it out of the hands of unelected justices and they put it in the hands of the people. And now we're seeing states vote. And what I'll tell you is, as much as I'm pro-life, I don't judge anyone for being pro-choice, and I don't want them to judge me for being pro-life. So when we're looking at this, there are some states that are going more on the pro-life side. I welcome that. There's some states that are going more on the pro-choice side. I wish that wasn't the case, but the people decided. But when it comes to the federal law, which is what's being debated here, be honest, it's going to take 60 Senate votes, a majority of the House, and a president to sign it. So no, we haven't had 60 Senate votes in over 100 years. We might have 45 pro-life senators. So no Republican president can ban abortions any more than a Democrat president can ban these state laws. So let's find consensus. Let's agree on how we can ban late-term abortions. Let's make sure we encourage adoptions and good quality adoptions. Let's make sure we make contraception accessible. Let's make sure that none of these state laws put a woman in jail or give her the death penalty for getting an abortion. Let's focus on how to save as many babies.
So she seems decently sensible on the abortion issue. Not as nuts as I would expect her to be. She has the whole religious fundamentalist crusade for Christ look about her. But like, I mean, she's still a Republican, but somewhat sensible on this.
As we can.
I was expecting her to say lock up every woman that even considers having an abortion.
And support as many moms as we can. And stop the judgment. We don't need to divide America over this issue anymore.
Thank you, Ambassador. Senator Scott. Senator Scott, I'd like you to weigh in.
You ain't having no abortion. That's what Tim Scott says.
How do you see the path forward? And what do you make of what Ambassador Haley just said? Do you see this as a consensus issue?
Well, I'm 100% pro-life. I have had 100% pro-life voting record. I would certainly, as President of the United States, have a 15-week national limit. I would not allow states like California, Illinois, or New York to have abortion up until the day of birth. I certainly wouldn't not allow for governors, former governor, Democratic governor of Virginia, who talked about infanticide. We need a 15-week federal limit. 3 out of 4 Americans agree with a 15-week limit.
Where the fuck is he getting this data from? No, we don't.
47 out of 50 countries in Europe agree with a 15-week limit. I would challenge both Nikki and Ron to join me at a 15-week limit. It is in...
This dude is slowly losing his mind on stage. Like, people aren't even clapping for him anymore.
Our nation's best interest, and frankly, I think it's unethical and immoral to allow for abortions up until the day of birth. We have an opportunity in this nation to stop that reckless behavior from states like California, New York, and Illinois.
So, I thought you were a supporter of states' rights. What business of yours if California wants to allow abortions up to the day of birth, which... Like these pro-life people, I don't even call them pro-life. I call them anti-abortion. These anti-abortion people, like, they make up the wildest shit. Like, nobody is hacking off little babies' heads. Like, bruh, just stop.
I'd go a step further. In my parents' plan, we start by talking about funding, block granting resources to crisis pregnancy centers. We should support adoption. There are a number of ways that we can say to the expectant mother that we stand with you. We should not only be pro-life before the child is born, we should be pro-life after the child is born just as much.
Senator Scott, thank you. Ambassador Haley, your name was invoked. Would you support a 15-week federal limit?
I would support anything that would pass because that's what would save more babies and support more moms. But you have to be honest with the American people, and I appreciate that Tim keeps calling me out for this. But Tim, there was a bill last year. Lindsey Graham sponsored it. You didn't even co-sponsor the bill. And then when you first were interviewed on this, when you ran, you wouldn't even say you were for 15 weeks. What I am saying to the American people is, let's see what we can agree on. Let's bring people together and decide what we can agree on. I will sign anything where we can get 60 Senate votes, but don't make the American people think that you're going to push something on them when we don't even have the votes in the Senate. It's important that we're honest about that.
Let me go to Mr. Ramaswamy. Would you support a 15-week federal ban, and what is the path forward on this issue?
I just wanted to say, I mean, I think Nikki Haley did invoke being honest, and I at least want to give credit to Tim Scott. He's honest about where he stood, and I think you should be honest, not making a political calculus, but to say, if a bill is served up, would you sign it? Here's my view on this. Speaking as a man, they say men have trouble speaking on this issue. I don't think we need to be that way. It was my home state of Ohio, I'm upset about this, yesterday, that passed a constitutional amendment that now effectively codifies a right to abortion all the way up to the time of birth without parental consent. Why? It's back to that Republican culture of losing. The Republicans did not have an alternative amendment or vision on the table. I know Ohio. I was born, raised, and I lived there. It's representative of the country. If in the state of Ohio...
You know, I should have been able to guess that this guy was from Ohio. He just gives Ohio dweeb energy, just flyover state energy.
We talked about access to contraception, adoption, and also here's the missing ingredient in this movement: sexual responsibility for men. We live in an era of reliable genetic paternity tests that are 100% reliable. So we can say men deserve more responsibility. So we can tell women we're all in this together. It's not men's rights versus women's rights. It's about human rights. And I come back to that case that Clarence Thomas spoke of. A pregnant woman walking down the street, she's assaulted. The unborn child dies in that assault. You find me one person in this country who says that that criminal does not deserve liability for that death. You won't find one. That says we share the same instincts on this issue, but we require, I believe, a different generation of leadership
thank you.
to actually lead us forward and unite the country on this with honesty.
Thank you, Mr. Ramaswamy. Governor Christie, as you know, federal limits are important to a lot of Republicans. Where do you stand on this issue, and what is the path forward for Republicans?
For 50 years, conservative lawyers have been arguing that the federal government should have absolutely nothing to do with this issue constitutionally because it's nowhere in the Constitution. And then Dobbs comes and we finally gain that victory, which was the creation of a constitutional right out of thin air that didn't exist. And now we have people running to say, let's short circuit the states from doing what they need to do, and let's go right to some type of federal ban at a certain number of weeks. And people on the stage have been all over the place: 20 weeks, 15 weeks, 12, 6. Look, the Frowners were really smart. And this is an issue that should be decided in each state. And I trust the people of this country, state by state, to make the call for themselves. Now, it's going to lead to a lot of divergence. In Oklahoma, you can't get an abortion unless the life of the mother is at risk. In my home state of New Jersey,
these people are just so fucking boring.
It goes up to 9.
This is like torture. This is torture. Like, this is how you torture a person. This is how you make a person mentally suffer.
9 months that you get an abortion. I find that morally reprehensible. But that is what the people of our state have voted for. And we should not short circuit that process until every state's people have the right.
Like, where's Trump? Like, they need to just hog-tie Trump and bring him to the next one of these things. Like, Trump provides the laughs. Trump provides the memes. Ramaswamy at least is providing a bit of laughs. But the rest of these people, they're just empty fucking suits.
Right to weigh in on it. But here's the bigger issue, Kirsten. The bigger issue is, and Tim began to touch on this, we're not pro-life for the whole life. To be pro-life for the whole life means that the life of a 16-year-old drug addict on the floor of the county lockup is precious, and we should get treatment for her to restore her life. The 52-year-old who's drug addicted should make sure that any of his children who he's passed that addiction on to are treated well too. Pro-life's not just in the womb, Kirsten, it's for the whole life.
All right, Governor, thank you. Candidates, thank you. We're going to take a final break, and when we come back, we'll hear from all of you with your closing statements. This is the NBC News Republican presidential debate. We'll be back right after this.
I'll be back. I'm going to go smoke. I'll be back. Smoke break.
Well, welcome back, everyone. With only 2 hours for a debate, we know there are other major issues that are important to Republican primary voters. I'll ask you each to please use your closing statement to focus on any topic you didn't have time to address and why you and not former President Trump would be the party's best choice to tackle these important issues. You each have a minute. Senator Scott, we'll start with you. 1 minute.
There's a crisis that is growing in our nation, and that crisis is cultural and spiritual. We need a renewal, a great awakening. We should reject the left's valueless, faithless, fatherless society. We should turn back to faith, patriotism, and individual responsibility. We should stop choosing victimhood and start choosing victory. We should stop kneeling in protest and start kneeling in prayer. There are basic truths that built this country. If you're able-bodied in America, you work. If you take out a loan, you pay it back. If you commit a violent crime, you go to jail. And if God made you a man, you play sports against men. I do not just want to...
Audience, please.
I do not just want to win the battle against Joe Biden. I want us together to win the war for our Christian conservative values that changed my life.
Senator Scott, thank you. Governor Christie, you have 1 minute.
That's why I'm asking you for your vote.
Thank you for hosting tonight. Listen, it's a gift to be an American. And I'm running for President of the United States because I'm tired. I'm tired of seeing the division. I'm tired of seeing the anger. And I could see in the eyes of Americans their exhaustion. Their exhaustion from the petty, personal politics that have taken over this country over the last number of years. I'm running for president to be a president of consequence, to do the big things, to make sure that America's role in the world stays number one.
You are a big thing. You are big thing number one, brother.
We stand up for our friends and allies around the world, and we stand up for what we believe in right here at home. And it's not to eliminate our differences. Our differences has always been our strength as a country, not our weakness. But you can't truly say you love America unless you're...
No, I'm just ass at my job. I'm sorry.
...ready to open up your heart to every American. I'm going to open up my heart to every American as president, and I will make sure...
You're going to need open heart surgery. Shut up.
...sure that I return honesty, integrity to the Oval Office. We deserve and should accept nothing less.
Governor, thank you very much. Let's go to Mr. Ramaswamy now. Your 1 minute.
We've talked a lot about foreign wars tonight, but we're in the middle of a war right here at home. It's a war not between black and white or Democrat and Republican. It's between those of us who believe in our founding ideals and love this country and a fringe minority who hates the United States of America. And I think it's going to take a commander-in-chief to lead us to victory.
Proud member of the fringe minority that hates the United States of America.
Victory in that war, who first of all knows that we're in a war. Second of all, can't be captured by the special interests along the way. But third is from the next generation, somebody with fresh legs to lead us to victory. I'll shut down the deep state. I'll declare economic independence from China. I'll keep us out of World War III, and then revive national pride in this country. I also want to close with one message to the Democrat Party. End this farce that Joe Biden is going to be your nominee. We know he's not even the president of the United States.
What are you talking about? He is going to be the nominee. Nobody else is running against him. Like, who are people going to vote for? Fucking RFK?
He's a puppet for the managerial class. So have the guts to step
So are you. You're literally the managerial class. You're a CEO, bruh.
up and be honest about who you're actually going to put up so we can have an honest debate. Biden should step aside, end his candidacy now, so we can see whether it's Newsom or Michelle Obama or whoever else.
All right,
just
Mr.
tell us the
Ramaswamy,
truth so we can have an honest
time is
debate.
up. Ambassador Haley, you have 1 minute for your closing.
Thank you. The world is on fire. We have a...
Yeah, and you want to help. You want to pour gasoline on it. Like everything you've said foreign policy-wise is fucking nuts, and it's going to lead to World War III.
war in Europe. We've got a war in the Middle East. We've got China on the march. It is very important that we know how to defend our freedoms and how to defeat terrorism and socialism. We have to know the difference between...
I'm right here. Come defeat me. I'm socialism.
between good and evil. We have to know the difference between right and wrong. We need to know that a strong America doesn't start wars, a strong America prevents wars. And the way we can focus on that is to make sure we go back to the soul of America and be strong and proud again.
America has no soul.
And we can't do that. We can't win the fights of the 21st century with politicians from the 20th century. We have to move forward, and we can do this. I know we can do this. So join our movement. Go to NikkiHaley.com, and we will once again show what America that's strong and proud looks like. God bless.
Ambassador, thank you. Governor DeSantis, you're closing. You have 1 minute.
We must reverse our country's decline, and that is going to require leadership. I will take the hits, I will take the arrows, I will take the barbs, because it's not about me, it's about you. It's not about the past, it's about your future. We are going to fight for you. I am going to win for you and your family, and I'm going to lead this country's revival. As a veteran of the Iraq War and in the Navy, I will always put service above self as president. As the father of 3 young kids, I'm going to ensure that this country is left to the next generation in better shape than we found it. And as the governor of Florida, I delivered on all my promises, and you can trust me to deliver for you as the president of the United States. I
wouldn't trust you to deliver me a fucking pizza.
Asking for your vote. I'll be a nominee that will be able to win the election. I will be a leader you can be proud of, and as your president, I will not let you down. God bless you.
Governor DeSantis, thank you. That is going to conclude our debate. The next line says, if the audience can hold their applause. That didn't work out. But anyway, for just a few more seconds, I'll ask you to just hold the applause. On behalf of my fellow moderators, I want to thank the candidates for their time and for this spirited debate.
So, yeah, my take on this, Tim Scott seemed to progressively succumb to dementia during this. Like, during the beginning, like, he made quite a bit of sense, but he eventually, like, I don't know if this guy has early onset senility or what. Vivek Ramaswamy or whatever. He has some MAGAcom talking points. Like, he is very, very, I guess you would say, left for the Republican Party on these foreign wars. But anything else, he's just like a fucking empty suit. He's a very good troll, though, but it's obvious that he's trying too hard with the Trump shit. DeSantis spent half the debate staring down after Nikki Haley whooped his ass. Very depressed, sad little Florida man. Nikki Haley started the debate by basically saying that she wants to start World War III and has a relatively advanced position on abortion rights, but generally nuts. Chris Christie came off as being the most professional and disciplined of the candidates. Like, he actually governed a state with the Democratic majority. But yeah, all these people are fucking nuts. Who do I think is going to win? Obviously, it's going to be Trump in 24. Biden hasn't done shit worth noting other than not be Trump. So, yeah, Trump is going to walk the floor with all these people, and Trump is going to walk the floor with Biden. So, commies, activate, because we're going to have a very, very, very interesting 4 years. I'm BRG. Don't despair. Organize, mobilize, study, and agitate. And of course, continue to watch me every night at midnight.